The blade catches the morning sun as the executioner raises it high above the kneeling woman. Her silk robes, once the mark of Mongol nobility, pool around her in the dust of the execution ground. The crowd presses forward, hundreds of eyes fixed on the trembling figure whose crime has brought her to this moment. From the slave wagons behind the platform, children's voices pierce the air calling for their mother, not understanding why iron chains now bind their small wrists. The woman's husband steps forward, his face carved from stone, addressing the assembled nobles with the cold precision of a man who has already counted his new wealth. "Let all witness the price of betrayal," his voice carries across the silent crowd. "My wife, mother of my children, has broken the sacred law. She has defiled our marriage bed with another man." The accusation hangs in the air like the blade itself, heavy with finality. The woman lifts her head, lips moving in what might be denial or prayer, but her words dissolve into the morning wind. The executioner adjusts his grip, muscles tensing for the strike that will end not just one life, but destroy an entire bloodline. The blade falls with a whisper of steel through air. The crowd erupts, some in savage approval, others turning away from the spray of blood that marks the ground. But something darker lurks beneath this display of justice. The husband's satisfaction runs deeper than wounded honor. The timing of this execution, the specific nobles invited to witness, the way certain rivals now avoid his gaze. This death serves purposes that have nothing to do with adultery. How did a single night of passion lead to an entire family's destruction? Why did the Mongol Empire, known for its sexual openness, reserve its cruelest punishments for wives who strayed? To understand, we need to go back to when Genghis Khan first carved these laws into stone. The chisel bites into stone with rhythmic strikes that echo through the great yurt. Each impact sends dust spiraling through shafts of sunlight while Mongol scribes huddle over their work. The year is 1206, and Genghis Khan watches his greatest legal innovation take physical form. These aren't just laws being carved, they're wounds being transformed into weapons. The great Khan's jaw tightens as memories flood back. His mother Hoelund, stolen from her first husband on her wedding day. The doubt that shadowed his eldest son Jochi, whose birth came 9 months after Hoelund's captivity among the Merkit tribe. Those whispers followed Genghis Khan from sheep herder to world conqueror. Every victory on the battlefield meant nothing if rival clans could question his son's bloodlines. The solution stands before him now, taking shape in stone. "Any married woman caught in adultery shall face death," the scribe reads aloud as his chisel works. The words fall into the yurt like dropped weapons. Her partner in sin shall share her fate. No rank or bloodline shall spare them from justice. The Khan nods, but his advisors shift uneasily on their cushions. They understand what their leader demands. A succession crisis could shatter the empire faster than any enemy army. Better to spill blood in the execution grounds than across the steppes in civil war. The chisel strikes continue, each blow writing death sentences for women not yet born, for passions not yet kindled. The law's first test comes within months of its creation. A carpenter's wife in Karakoram, caught with a travelling merchant by her own sister. The crowd gathers slowly at first, uncertain what to expect from this new justice. The woman kneels in rough wool, far from the silk robes that will drape future victims. Her lover stands beside her, both awaiting the archer's arrow. No elaborate ceremony yet, no raised platforms or executioner's sword, just swift step justice delivered at dawn. The arrow takes her through the heart. She crumples forward without a sound while her partner screams until the second arrow silences him. The crowd disperses quickly, but word spreads faster than wildfire across dry grass. The Khan's law has teeth. Within days, reports reach the royal yurt of husbands suddenly more attentive, wives more careful with their smiles. "My lord," an advisor ventures during the evening council. Some question whether death serves justice for a moment's weakness. Genghis Khan's response chills the yurt despite the burning braziers. A moment's weakness in a wife creates a lifetime of doubt in succession. One bastard claiming noble blood could cost 10,000 lives in civil war. Better to die today than armies tomorrow. The mathematics of empire written in blood. The advisor bows and says nothing more, but others around the council fire exchange glances. They've seen how quickly accusations can fly when inheritance hangs in the balance, how easily a rival might whisper about a wife's faithfulness to eliminate a competitor's heirs. The law meant to ensure pure bloodlines might become the perfect political weapon. More executions follow as the Yassa code spreads across the growing empire. A herder's wife in the Altai Mountains, discovered with her husband's brother. The local governor enforces the new law with arrows again, but something shifts in the crowd's reaction. They watch longer now, lean forward at the moment of death. Some even cheer when the bodies fall. The spectacle of justice transforms into entertainment. Each execution refines the ritual. Platforms rise higher, crowds grow larger. The simple arrows give way to hanging, then to the sword for nobility. The carpenter's wife died in silence, but later victims plead, deny, accuse their accusers of lies. Their words vanish into crowd noise and then into death, but the pattern emerges clearly. Husbands who benefit from their wives' deaths through new marriages or cleared debts. Brothers who inherit when their siblings' entire lines face slavery. The scribes continue carving adultery laws, adding provisions that will echo through generations. The betrayed husband may claim the adulteress's dowry. Her family forfeits protection under the law. Her children bear the shame of their mother's sin. Each chisel strike deepens the consequences, spreads the punishment wider than the original crime ever reached. What of men who take multiple wives? A younger scribe asks quietly during a break in the carving. They bed whom they choose without consequence. The master scribe glances toward where Genghis Khan confers with his generals. The Khan himself has hundreds of wives and concubines. The law speaks only of women's faithfulness, not men's. A wise scribe carves what he's told and keeps his questions behind his teeth. The young man returns to his work, but the contradiction hangs in the air like incense smoke. In the very yurt where these death sentences take shape, the Khan's lesser wives wait their turn for his attention, knowing their lives depend on absolute fidelity while their shared husband rides between the beds of conquered princesses. By winter, the executions have developed their own season. Spring brings military campaigns, summer brings trade, autumn brings harvest, and winter brings adultery trials. The frozen ground makes burial difficult, so bodies stack like cordwood outside city walls. Wolves grow bold, drawn by the scent of justice served cold. A disturbing efficiency emerges in the process. Local governors appoint specialized executioners. Slave traders hover near trial grounds, ready to bid on condemned families. Scribes develop standard forms for adultery accusations. The machinery of death runs smoother with each turn of the wheel. The Khan receives reports of the law's enforcement with satisfaction. Order spreads across his territories like frost across a meadow. Marriage contracts become more valuable when breaking them means death. Noble bloodlines remain pure, or at least purely claimed. The very threat of accusation keeps wives bound tighter than any chain. Yet cracks appear in this foundation of fear. Whispers reach the royal court of innocent women condemned on false testimony, of husbands who tire of their wives finding convenient witnesses, of political rivals destroyed through bedroom accusations rather than battlefield defeats. The law meant to protect bloodlines begins to devour them. One report particularly catches the Khan's attention. A provincial governor's wife, executed for adultery just days after her husband's rival suffered a convenient hunting accident. The timing suggests coordination. The governor inherits his rival's lands through marriage to the widow, while his first wife's children vanish into slave markets. Justice served, or justice perverted. The law is the law, Genghis Khan declares when advisors raise concerns. Those who use it falsely will face their own judgment in time, but the law itself stands as carved. The chisel strikes resume, adding new provisions. Slaves who report their mistress's adultery earn freedom. Children who witness their mother's crimes must testify or share their fate. The net of suspicion spreads wider, catches more desperate fish. Each addition makes false accusations easier, true justice harder to find. The first noble execution comes 2 years after the law's creation. A minor princess, caught with her music teacher by servants eager for the promised reward. She kneels on a proper platform now, silk robes spreading around her like spilled wine. The crowd numbers in the thousands, drawn by the novelty of noble blood about to flow. Her last words carry across the silent assembly. I die innocent of this charge, but guilty of trusting those I should have feared. The sword falls before anyone can pass her meaning. Her children, products of unquestioned noble lineage, disappear into slave wagons while her husband already negotiates with matchmakers. The pattern establishes itself in blood and repetition. Accusation, trial, execution, enslavement, remarriage, profit. The cycle turns with mechanical precision, each rotation crushing more families beneath its wheel. The Khan's law succeeds in its purpose. Bloodlines remain unquestioned because questioners risk everything. Winter executions become elaborate affairs. Musicians play between deaths. Food vendors work the crowds. Betting pools form on how many will die before sunset. The original horror transforms into habit, then entertainment, then tradition. Children grow up thinking this is how the world has always worked, will always work. The master scribe sets down his chisel as the final provision takes shape in stone. It is complete, my lord. The adultery laws of the Yassa stand ready for your seal. Genghis Khan approaches the stone tablet, runs his fingers across the carved words that will outlive empires. Each line represents a calculation in blood, a price set on women's lives, a weapon disguised as justice. He nods approval, but something flickers behind his eyes. Memory, perhaps, or prophecy. Let all who read these words understand. He declares to the assembled court, the price of betrayal is absolute. The cost of mercy is chaos. These laws preserve the blood that flows through our children's veins. The court murmurs agreement, but in the shadows, a young woman watches her father praise the harsh new laws. She doesn't yet know that she'll one day kneel on an execution platform, accused by her own husband, her children bound for slavery. The Khan's own granddaughter, caught in the web of laws he carved to protect his legacy. The chisel falls silent. The work is complete. But the law's first test would come from within Genghis Khan's own family. The bronze bells of Karakoram toll 3 times. Dawn execution hour. The platform builders work through the night now, their hammers marking time until sunrise brings fresh blood. A noble husband paces his yurt, wedding contracts spread across his table like battle plans. His wife sleeps unaware in their bed, her fate already sealed by documents she'll never see. The accusation arrives with morning prayers. Guards burst through silk curtains, dragging the woman from her furs while her children scatter like startled birds. The charge reads simple enough. Adultery with a horse trainer, witnessed by 3 servants who stand ready to testify. Their freedom depends on her death. The husband watches from his doorway, calculating dowry returns before his wife's screams fade into the prison wagon. Noble blood demands special treatment under the Yassa code. Common women meet arrows or hanging ropes, but silk-robed wives face the executioner's sword. The distinction matters in these carefully choreographed displays of justice. Each class dies according to its station, maintaining hierarchy even in death. The first noble execution under the new protocols draws every aristocrat within riding distance. Lady Berta of the Naiman tribe kneels on fresh-cut planks, her crime supposedly discovered when a servant girl found jade hairpins in the wrong bedroom. Strange how that servant girl now wears silk herself, elevated to concubine status in the accuser's household. The crowd notices but says nothing. Speaking brings suspicion, and suspicion brings chains. The executioner arrives in ceremonial robes, his sword blessed by shamans for this holy work. Behind the platform, 3 covered wagons wait with empty shackles sized for children. The mechanics of family destruction run smooth, as water over stones. Accusations at dawn, trials at midday, executions before sunset, enslavement by nightfall. The system perfects itself through repetition. Lady Berta's children stand in chains, watching their mother's final moments. The eldest, a boy of 12, keeps his eyes fixed on her face, while his younger sisters sob into their brother's shoulders. They wear rough wool now, their noble clothes already redistributed to their father's new family. The transformation from nobility to property takes less than a day. The sword rises, catching sunlight like a silver flame. The crowd leans forward, breath held. waiting for the moment that transforms a wife into a warning. But Lady Berta speaks first, her voice carrying clear across the assembly. "My husband sends me to death for the crime of bearing him daughters instead of sons. Let the gods judge who truly breaks faith." The blade falls before anyone processes her words. "Clean through the neck," the manual demands, no sawing or hacking that might suggest divine displeasure. Her head rolls forward while her body crumples sideways, silk robes now canvas for spreading crimson. The crowd erupts in cheers and gasps, the sound washing over her children as they're hauled toward the slave wagons. The husband steps forward to claim his wife's jewelry from her corpse. Custom allows this, along with her dowry gold and any property she brought to marriage. He works methodically, unhooking necklaces and pulling rings from still warm fingers. The crowd watches this harvest of death with knowing looks. His new marriage announcement will come within the week. More noble executions follow as accusation becomes aristocratic tool. Lord Temujin's wife dies for supposedly meeting a merchant in her gardens. The merchant vanishes before trial, but testimony from paid witnesses suffices. Her death opens lucrative trade routes to her husband's control. Their twin sons disappear into mining camps, their noble blood worthless in slavery. The pattern reveals itself through repetition. Older wives replaced by younger models. Inconvenient pregnancies erased through maternal execution. Political alliances shattered by bedroom accusations. The adultery law serves 100 purposes, none involving actual adultery. Princess Alakai faces her death differently than most. The Khan's own cousin, caught supposedly with a Chinese diplomat, she demands trial by ordeal. The ancient rite exists in Mongol law, predating the Yassa code. Her husband objects, but tradition runs deeper than convenience. The crowd buzzes with anticipation of this rare spectacle. The ordeal requires holding a red-hot iron bar for 9 steps. Innocence brings divine protection from burns, guilt brings charred flesh and death regardless. Princess Alakai strips to her shift, approaches the brazier where the iron glows like captured sunlight. The executioner stands ready with his sword, knowing the outcome before she touches metal. She grasps the bar without hesitation. 1 step. Her face remains serene while smoke rises from her palms. 2 steps. The crowd counts along, some praying, others placing bets. 3 steps. The smell of burning flesh drifts across the platform. 4 steps. Blood runs between her fingers, mixing with charred skin. 5 steps. She stumbles on the 6th step but doesn't release the bar. 7, 8, 9. She sets the iron carefully back in its brazier, then holds up her ruined hands for inspection. The flesh hangs in ribbons, bones visible through gaps, but she stands upright. The shamans examine the wounds, conferring in whispers that stretch like torture. "The spirits have spoken," the eldest shaman announces. The burns show guilt, the sentence stands. The crowd roars disapproval, but Princess Alakai merely nods. She knew before touching the iron that innocence exists only in stories. Her husband inherits her vast herds, her children vanish into slavery, her name disappears from noble records. But her death sparks whispers about divine justice perverted by human greed. The executions grow more elaborate as nobles compete to display their loyalty to law. Musicians play between deaths, creating symphony from suffering. Food vendors sell meat skewers to crowds that cheer each falling head. Children perch on their fathers' shoulders for better views, learning early that women's lives balance on their husbands' whims. Lord Batu pioneers new refinements in the theatre of death. His wife supposedly committed adultery with her own cousin, a capital crime carrying special shame. He arranges her execution during the harvest festival. Maximum crowd guaranteed. The platform rises 3 times normal height, ensuring visibility from the farthest ranks. She wears the yellow robes of shame, her head shaved to mark her disgrace. But underneath the costume of guilt, observers note the bruises on her arms, the way she favors her left side where ribs might be broken. Her confession came quickly during private questioning. Too quickly, some whisper, but whispers don't stop executions. The cuisine lover kneels beside her, though witnesses place him 200 miles away during the supposed crime. Details matter less than demonstration. Lord Batu needs his wife's lands for his military campaigns, needs her removal to secure alliance with a rival clan through marriage. The law provides the means. The executioner tests his blade on silk scarves, slicing through them like morning mist. The crowd appreciates this showmanship, calling out encouragement and suggestions. Some throw flowers toward the platform, others rotten fruit at the condemned. The festival atmosphere builds as death approaches. Lord Batu addresses the assembly with practiced sorrow. My heart breaks to enforce this law, but justice knows no favorites. Let all wives see and remember, faithfulness is life, betrayal is death. He signals the executioner while already planning his next wedding feast. The double execution draws unprecedented crowds. Vendors run out of food. Children fight for viewing positions. Nobles place wagers on which head will roll farther. The carnival of death reaches new heights of spectacle, each execution surpassing the last in theatrical display. But among the crowd, careful observers notice patterns. The accused wives share certain traits beyond their supposed adultery: wealth through inheritance, political connections that complicate their husbands' ambitions, sons from previous marriages who might claim property. The law targets precisely, disguised as moral enforcement. A group of lesser nobles' wives begins meeting in secret, sharing information about accusations and outcomes. They map the patterns, track which husbands benefit most from their wives' deaths. The knowledge offers little protection but validates their growing terror. Any night might bring guards to their doors. One woman speaks what others only think. We live as hostages to our husbands' ambitions. One false witness, one bribed servant, and we kneel on those platforms while our children enter slavery. Silence, another hisses. Such talk is treason against the law. Then we die either way, the first responds. By sword for adultery we didn't commit, or by sword for speaking truth about our danger. The meeting disperses quickly, but the fear spreads faster. Noble wives become shadows in their own homes, careful of every word, every glance, every moment that might be twisted into accusation. The very servants who dress them might testify against them for freedom. Their own children could be tortured into confirming lies. The execution ground expands to accommodate larger crowds. Permanent seating rises for nobles who attend regularly. Specialists emerge in false testimony, offering their services to husbands seeking legal murder. The infrastructure of death grows more sophisticated with each passing season. Lady Mandukai faces her execution with unique defiance. Accused of adultery with a travelling scholar, she refuses the traditional last words of repentance. Instead, she names names. Every noble wife murdered under false pretenses, every husband who profited from legal assassination, every witness who lied for gold or freedom. The executioner shifts nervously as she continues her litany. The crowd falls silent, absorbing accusations that confirm their darkest suspicions. Lord Togrul had his wife killed to marry his rival's widow. Lord Kubilai eliminated 3 wives in succession, each death bringing greater wealth. The pattern laid bare in a dying woman's words. The sword falls mid-sentence, but her words echo in the sudden silence. The crowd disperses without its usual celebration. Noble husbands eye each other with new calculation, wondering who might be naming their crimes next. The execution meant to silence one woman amplifies her message beyond any living voice. The slave wagons fill with noble children that day, but something shifts in the atmosphere. The carnival mood sours into something darker. Even the vendors pack up early, sensing the change in crowd dynamics. Lady Mandukai's death marks a turning point in public perception. Reports reach the Khan's court of unrest in the noble classes. Not rebellion exactly, but a growing coldness between husbands and wives. Marriage beds become battlegrounds of suspicion. Every gift might hide ulterior motives. Every kindness might precede accusation. The law meant to ensure fidelity destroys the trust it claims to protect. Some nobles begin sending their wives to remote estates, claiming illness or religious retreat. Better to live separated than die together. Others hire food tasters, fearing poison more than public execution. The paranoia spreads both directions as wives realize they too might eliminate dangerous husbands through careful planning. The executions continue but lose their festival atmosphere. Crowds still gather but watch in grim silence. The cheers die away as people recognize their own possibilities in each falling blade. Today's spectator might be tomorrow's victim. The machine of death consumes without discrimination. Lord Aric attempts to restore the theatrical element through mass execution. 5 wives accused of organizing adultery parties, supposedly corrupting each other into sin. The logistics alone strain credibility, but 5 grieving husbands mean 5 unified testimonies. The women range in age from 16 to 60, their supposed conspiracy crossing generations. They kneel in a line, silk robes creating a rainbow of condemnation. The executioner requires assistance for this unprecedented display. 5 swords, 5 assistants, 5 simultaneous deaths, plan to demonstrate the law's absolute power. The crowd presses forward despite itself, morbid curiosity overwhelming recent restraint. The signal drops. 5 blades fall, but only 3 find their marks. 2 women collapse forward, wounded but alive, blood spreading beneath them while they writhe on the platform. The crowd erupts in chaos. Divine intervention, some scream. Incompetence, others argue. The wounded women moan their innocence, while executioners argue over who delivers the finishing blows. The botched execution becomes immediate legend. Surely the gods themselves intervened to prevent innocent deaths. The 2 survivors bleed out eventually, but their extended suffering transforms into martyrdom. Offerings appear at the execution ground. Prayers rise for the wrongly accused. The platform meant for justice becomes a shrine to its perversion. Noble husbands find accusations suddenly harder to sustain. Witnesses develop conscience or conveniently vanish. Servants refuse to testify even for promised freedom. The machinery of false accusation grinds slower, though it never fully stops. Too much profit flows through legal murder for complete abandonment. The Khan receives disturbing reports from his governors. The adultery laws still function but create unexpected consequences. Noble bloodlines remain pure through terror, but marriages produce fewer heirs as couples avoid intimacy. Trade suffers as noble widows' wealth concentrates in fewer hands. The empire's strength derives from its families, and the families crumble under legal assault. Yet the law stands carved in stone, immutable as mountains. To change it would admit error, show weakness, invite chaos. The executions must continue, even as their purpose warps beyond recognition. Each death builds higher walls between husbands and wives, deeper suspicion between classes, wider gulf between law and justice. The final execution of the season brings unexpected drama. Lady Chabi, elderly matriarch of a powerful clan, faces death for adultery supposedly committed 40 years ago. Her accuser, a grandson seeking inheritance, produces witnesses who swear to ancient indiscretions. The absurdity breaks through even jaded expectations. She approaches the platform using a walking stick, her executioner forced to help her kneel properly. The crowd watches in uncomfortable silence as this grandmother prepares for death over decades-old accusations. Her children and grandchildren fill 3 slave wagons, generations destroyed by one man's greed. "I go to join my husband in the eternal blue sky," she announces in a voice cracked with age. "There I will tell him how his grandson murdered me for gold. Let the spirits judge between us." The sword falls on a woman who barely has strength to hold her head upright. Her death sparks no celebration, only muttered curses at the grandson, who inherits everything. Within days he dies mysteriously at a feast, poisoned by unknown hands. The cycle of death through law breeds death through vengeance. Winter brings a brief respite from executions as frozen ground prevents proper burial. Bodies stack in warehouses, awaiting spring thaw. The slave markets overflow with noble children, driving prices down until aristocratic blood sells cheaper than common labor. The unintended economics of mass enslavement disrupts traditional hierarchies. Noble wives use the winter pause to develop new strategies. Some forge documents proving their husbands' crimes, insurance against future accusations. Others cultivate loyalties among servants through unprecedented kindness. A few embrace the danger, taking actual lovers in defiance of laws that condemn them regardless. The execution platforms stand empty, but not forgotten. Snow covers the bloodstains, but not the memories. Every noble marriage exists under the shadow of those raised swords. Every wedding night carries the spectre of future execution. The Yassa code succeeds in its goal of ensuring legitimate bloodlines through terror, but at costs Genghis Khan never calculated. Spring arrives with its ritual of death resuming. New platforms rise higher, executioners polish their skills, crowds gather with resigned expectation. The noble blood that built the Mongol Empire now waters its execution grounds. The machine of death operates with mindless efficiency, consuming wives and children, innocence and guilt alike. But among the condemned, whispers spread of women who escaped their fate through cunning rather than innocence. Stories filter through slave wagons and prison cells of those who turned the law against itself, who found cracks in the stone-carved certainty of death. These tales pass from mother to daughter, servant to mistress, a mythology of survival in an empire built on women's bodies. The executions continue their bloody routine. Swords rise and fall with mechanical precision. Children disappear into slavery, while husbands count their profits. The carnival of death plays on, but underneath the spectacle, something stirs. Knowledge, planning, resistance. Yet some women found a way to cheat death itself. The bleating fills the morning air like a chorus of desperate prayers. 300 goats surge through Karakoram's western gate, their hooves drumming against frozen earth while herders struggle to maintain order. The animals flow toward the governor's compound in a river of brown and white, their voices rising to wake the entire quarter. Behind them rides a merchant whose wife kneels in the prison tower, her execution scheduled for noon. The Chargin Bishig Code offers this single mercy. A man whose wife commits adultery may spare her life through payment of livestock. The exact number depends on rank, wealth, and the judge's disposition. Common herders might save their wives with 20 sheep. This merchant brings 300 goats, plus 50 horses waiting outside the gates. His entire fortune bleats its way toward the governor's courtyard. Inside the compound, the governor counts animals from his window. His scribes ready their tallies while guards herd goats into temporary pens. The merchant dismounts, falls to his knees in the courtyard mud. His voice cracks as he begs for his wife's life, offering every animal he owns, every coin in his coffers. The display moves some observers to tears. Others calculate the political cost of mercy. The law exists in writing, carved alongside the death sentences. But which men receive this option depends on factors beyond legal text. The merchant trades in northern routes, controls passages the governor needs for spring campaigns. His wife's supposed lover conveniently died in a tavern brawl before trial. The equation balances toward profit rather than blood. Sometimes, the governor emerges in ceremonial robes, his face arranged in stern contemplation. He examines the goats with theatrical precision, checking teeth and coats, as if their quality might determine a woman's fate. The merchant trembles through this performance, knowing the decision was made before the first animal entered the gate. Still, the ritual demands completion. The law permits mercy for those who pay its price. The governor intones, "Your wealth buys your wife's life, but not her freedom. She enters your household as a slave, property like these beasts you've brought. Her status dies today, even if her body lives." The merchant accepts these terms with pathetic gratitude. His wife will breathe, even if she breathes in chains. Their children keep their father, though their mother becomes a legal ghost. The goats have performed their purpose, transforming from livestock to life itself. Guards escort the merchant to the prison while scribes distribute animals among the governor's allies. Each goat represents a calculated transaction. The governor keeps enough to show profit, gifts enough to maintain loyalties, sells enough to fund next season's campaigns. The woman's life becomes a commodity distributed across ledgers. In the prison tower, she collapses when guards announce her reprieve. The death she'd prepared for transforms into a different ending. Neither freedom nor vindication, but survival wrapped in servitude. Her husband owns her now in ways marriage never permitted. The chains they bring are decorative iron, marking her new status for all to see. Other prisoners watch through cell bars as she trades death robes for slave wool. Some weep for her fortune, others for her fate. The woman in the adjacent cell faces execution tomorrow. Her husband raises sheep, not goats. His entire flock wouldn't buy her life at current prices. The arithmetic of mercy cuts sharp as any blade. Regional variations in the code create their own hierarchies of hope. In the western provinces, judges accept camels or fine horses. The southern territories demand silver by weight. Eastern governors prefer Chinese silk and jade. Each region's economy of mercy reflects local power structures, turning women's lives into currency markets. Lord Nogai tests these boundaries when his wife faces accusation. Rather than livestock, he offers military service. 500 mounted warriors for 10 years, their wages paid from his treasury. The judge considers this novel payment while calculating its value against traditional goats. Warriors might be worth more than animals, but they also carry risks that livestock never pose. The negotiation stretches through 3 days of ceremonial haggling. Lord Nogai increases his offer. 1,000 warriors, supply trains included. His wife waits in her cell, counting heartbeats between each update. The other prisoners place bets on her fate, using bread crusts as currency for their morbid wagers. The judge finally accepts, creating precedent for military payment. Lord Nogai's wife emerges in slave chains, but she emerges breathing. Her warrior price enters the records, establishing new rates for noble wives whose husbands command armies. The economics of survival grow more complex with each innovation. Some women learn these rates like merchants studying trade routes. They cultivate their own wealth secretly, hiding gold and jade against future accusation. A wise wife maintains her own goat herd, registered in her father's name. The paranoia of potential execution breeds its own economy of preparation. Lady Burt accumulates horses through careful breeding, telling her husband they're dowry gifts for their daughters. In truth, she builds her life's price one foal at a time. Her foresight proves valuable when a rival plants evidence of adultery in her chambers. The horses transform from dowry to ransom overnight. The payment system creates perverse incentives throughout noble society. Poor husbands might accuse wealthy wives simply to generate the payment negotiation. Even failed attempts bring bribes and considerations. The threat of execution becomes a tool for extortion, wielded by those who understand its economics. Provincial governors maintain different payment scales, creating a geography of women's values. The northern territories accept furs and amber. The western regions prefer silk and spices. A woman's life costs different amounts depending on where her husband accuses her. Some families relocate to regions with lower rates, preparing for possibilities they pray never arise. The merchant's wife learns her new status through small humiliations. She serves tea to guests who once served her. Her children call her servant mother in public to maintain appearances. Her husband treats her kindly in private but performs ownership in daylight. The goats bought her breath but cost her personhood. Market days bring reminders of the exchange rates. Livestock traders joke about wife prices while examining animals. A particularly fine goat earns comments about how many adulteresses it might save. The casual cruelty enters common speech, normalizing the equation of women with property. Some judges develop reputations for flexibility in payment acceptance. Judge Tolui takes artistic works, rare manuscripts, even promises of future favor. His courtyard fills with eclectic payments extracted from desperate husbands. Each item tells a story of a woman who nearly died, a family that barely survived. The payment option technically exists for all classes, but reality shows different patterns. Noble wives see salvation through valuable exchanges. Common women face arrows regardless of their husband's wishes. The law's mercy follows wealth like shadows follow Sunday. Poor men's wives die, while rich men's wives enter servitude. A disturbing market emerges in execution insurance. Wealthy families contract with merchants, paying annual fees against potential future accusations. The merchants maintain herds specifically for such emergencies, ready to dispatch goats at first word of arrest. Women's lives become actuarial calculations in ledger books. The insurance merchants grow wealthy from paranoia. They study accusation patterns, calculate risk based on husbands' temperaments and wives' connections. Some refuse to insure women whose husbands show certain warning signs. Others charge premium rates for high-risk marriages. The business of preventing death becomes as organized as death itself. Regional differences in mercy pricing create migration patterns. Families with marriageable daughters research execution payment rates like dowry negotiations. A province with reasonable goat prices attracts more noble marriages than one demanding horses or gold. The geography of women's value reshapes social movements. Lord Batu's province sees an influx of wealthy families after he establishes fixed rates. 200 goats for nobles, 50 for merchants, 20 for craftsmen. The clarity attracts those who prefer known costs to arbitrary judgments. His execution grounds see less blood but more bleating, as most choose payment over death. The fixed rates create their own problems. Husbands calculate whether their wives' deaths or servitude brings greater profit. Some women die because their lives cost more than their husbands willingly pay. Others live in chains because servitude proves more valuable than inheritance. The cold mathematics replace both justice and mercy. A woman named Solongo disrupts these calculations through clever legal maneuvering. Accused of adultery, she claims pregnancy. The law forbids executing expectant mothers until after birth. During her reprieve, she negotiates her own payment through family connections. Her goats arrive before her child does, transforming execution into servitude on her own terms. Her success inspires others to seek delays and loopholes. Sudden pregnancies multiply among accused wives. Religious conversions require ceremonial delays. Illness postpones trials until payment arrangements solidify. The system meant for swift justice bogs down in tactical delays. Judges respond with harsher interpretations. Pregnancy claims require immediate examination by midwives. Religious conversions need documented proof of prior interest. Illness must be verified by multiple physicians. The arms race between accusation and delay escalates with each innovation. Some provinces abandon the payment system entirely. The Northern Khan declares all adultery executions final, no payments accepted. His execution grounds run red through winter, while neighboring provinces echo with goats. The inconsistency creates legal tourism, as accusations get filed in jurisdictions matching desired outcomes. The merchant's wife adapts to her new existence through small rebellions. She serves tea with subtle clumsiness, staining silk robes. Her embroidery contains hidden insults in thread. She performs servitude while maintaining dignity through these tiny resistances. The goats bought her life, but not her spirit. Other saved women form quiet networks of support. They meet at markets, exchanging glances that speak volumes. Their shared survival creates bonds stronger than their former noble friendships. They know the price of breath measured in livestock, the weight of chains chosen over death. The payment system evolves through practice and precedent. Some regions accept labor instead of livestock. Others permit artistic creations or religious donations. The economy of mercy expands beyond simple animals to encompass anything desperate husbands might offer for their wives' lives. A young judge named Kadan attempts reform by standardizing payments across provinces. His proposal creates unified rates based on clear legal principles rather than local whims. The nobility resist, preferring the flexibility that lets them profit from others' desperation. His reforms die in council chambers, while women continue dying on platforms. The failure of reform entrenches existing systems. Judges who profit from payment negotiations resist any changes. Governors who use flexible rates for political advantage block standardization. The chaos serves those in power while crushing those subject to it. Women's lives remain currency in an economy designed for their exploitation. Yet within this system, some find ways to survive. They learn the rates, study the loopholes, prepare for accusations that might never come. They transform from victims to strategists, playing the game of survival with livestock as their chips. The goats that save them become symbols of both mercy and its price. The merchant's wife serves dinner to her husband's guests, chains hidden beneath flowing robes. She smiles at their jokes, pours wine with steady hands, performs the role of saved woman grateful for mercy. But her eyes hold knowledge of the system's cruelty, the price of breath, the cost of survival. Tomorrow brings new accusations, new negotiations, new women learning their lives' value in goats and gold. The payment system continues its evolution, creating hope for some, despair for others. The bleating that announced one woman's salvation becomes another's death knell when her husband's flock falls short. The Chajin Bishig Code's mercy clause stands carved beside its death sentences. Two paths from accusation, one ending in blood, the other in bleating. The choice depends on wealth, connection, geography, and the cold calculation of women's worth in livestock. But for women caught in political crosshairs, no amount of goats could save them. When adultery accusations served larger purposes than personal revenge, when the stakes rose beyond family honor to imperial power, the payment system crumbled against political necessity. These women faced accusers who wanted not their servitude or their wealth, but their complete erasure from history itself. The screams echo from the regent's torture chamber, each cry marking another turn of the screw, another confession extracted through agony. Turgen Khatun sits in her reception hall, wine cup balanced between jeweled fingers, listening to the music of accusation being carved from human throats. The year is 1241, and the most powerful woman in the Mongol Empire has discovered that adultery laws make exceptional political weapons. The regent's rise began with her husband Urgadai Khan's death, officially from drink, though some whisper of poison in his final cup. She seized power with the ruthless precision of a steppe eagle taking prey, her talons sinking deep into the imperial apparatus. The great Khans always understood that succession meant blood. Turgen simply refined the method, replacing battlefield slaughter with bedroom accusations that achieved the same results. Her latest victim hangs in the palace dungeons, joints separated by precise application of weighted chains. Fatima al-Khatun had served as advisor to the previous administration, her influence reaching into every corner of government. Too much influence, Turgen decided. The solution came wrapped in silk sheets and false witnesses who swore they saw the advisor in compromising positions with a stable hand. The torturer's tools clink against stone as he selects his next instrument. Turgen specified creativity in extracting confession, understanding that broken bodies speak whatever truths their tormentors require. The stable hand died mysteriously before arrest, preventing any contradictory testimony. His absence makes Fatima's protests irrelevant against the machinery of accusation. She holds significant gold reserves. Turgen's treasurer reports during the evening council. Her execution would enrich the imperial coffers substantially. The regent swirls her wine, calculating profits beyond mere gold. Fatima's removal opens pathways to promote loyalists, redistribute trade licenses, reshape the entire administrative structure. The adultery charge serves as the key that unlocks a dozen political doors. The treasurer continues his tallies while screams punctuate his figures. 3 floors below, Fatima discovers how flesh transforms under professional attention. The torturer works with an artist's focus, understanding that confession requires careful cultivation. Too much damage kills before words emerge. Too little fails to break the will. He operates in the space between, where pain births whatever truth power demands. "Tell us about your lover," he suggests between applications of heated bronze. "Describe your betrayals of sacred marriage vows." Fatima's response dissolves into wordless agony. The torturer notes her resistance in his ledger, planning tomorrow's innovations. The regent pays well for confessions that withstand public scrutiny. His reputation depends on delivering criminals who admit their crimes convincingly, even if those crimes exist only in Turgen's political calculations. The palace halls fill with whispers about Fatima's fate. Courtiers who once sought her favor now distance themselves, understanding the contagion of accusation. Association with the condemned brings scrutiny, and scrutiny in Turgen's court often ends in chains. The safest path lies in enthusiastic support of whatever justice the regent dispenses. Guards drag a new prisoner past Fatima's cell, another woman whose political connections mark her for elimination. The charges vary: adultery, witchcraft, treason, but the methodology remains consistent. Turgen identifies threats or opportunities, manufactures appropriate accusations, then harvests the benefits of legally sanctioned murder. "My Lady Regent," a nervous minister approaches during morning assembly. "Some question the frequency of these adultery discoveries in our court." Turgen's smile could freeze blood in veins. Are you suggesting our noble women lack virtue, or that our justice lacks precision? The minister stammers apologies, retreating from questions that edge too close to accusation. Others note his discomfort, filing it away for future reference. Today's questioner becomes tomorrow's questioned in this palace of manufactured crimes. The torture chamber's screams take on new rhythms as different instruments find their purpose. Fatima's confession emerges in pieces, each fragment purchased with calculated suffering. She admits to meetings that never occurred, describes passion she never felt, names accomplices who exist only in her tormentor's requirements. The fiction takes shape through blood and breaking. Turrigan reviews the preliminary confession with satisfaction. The details align perfectly with her political needs. Fatima's supposed lovers include 3 ministers who showed insufficient loyalty, 2 merchants who competed with royal favorites, and a general whose military success threatened established hierarchies. The adultery web expands to ensnare exactly those targets the regent needs removed. Schedule the execution for next week's festival, she commands. Ensure maximum attendance. The people must witness justice served. Her scribes hurry to arrange the spectacle while Fatima endures another session designed to polish her confession's details. Each name she provides under torture becomes another death warrant, another family destroyed, another fortune redirected to Turrigin's allies. The personal transforms into political through careful application of heated metal and weighted chains. The regent's own background makes her mastery of these tools particularly effective. Born into minor nobility, married for alliance rather than affection, she understands how women become weapons in political warfare. Her elevation to power simply reversed the equation. Now she wields accusations as men wield swords, cutting down obstacles with equal precision. Bring me the jeweler's wife, Turrigan orders after reviewing trade reports. The woman's husband controls crucial supply lines from Persia, routes the regent needs for her planned campaigns. His wife's beauty and his wealth make adultery charges plausible. More importantly, her execution would leave him desperate for royal favor, willing to accept whatever terms preserve his remaining family. The machinery activates with practiced efficiency. Witnesses receive their instructions and payments. Guards prepare arrest orders. The torture chamber clears space for new occupants. Another political problem transforms into a moral failing requiring violent correction. Fatima's formal confession fills 12 pages, each word extracted through methodical brutality. She admits to seducing powerful men, corrupting loyal servants of the empire, using her feminine wiles to advance treasonous agendas. The document reads like Turrigin's enemies list disguised as erotic confession. Those named face their own arrests within hours. The regent protects us from such vipers, courtiers murmur, loud enough to be overheard. Thank the eternal sky she sees through their deceptions. The performance of loyalty becomes survival skill in Turrigan's palace. Those who cheer loudest at executions earn favorable notice. Those who show sympathy risk sharing the condemned's fate. The court transforms into theatre, where everyone plays their role or faces final curtains. The jeweler's wife arrives in chains, her confusion genuine until the charges echo through palace halls. She denies everything with the desperate truth of innocence, which only guarantees harsher interrogation. Truth matters less than utility in Turrigan's justice system. Her protests will transform into confession given sufficient encouragement. Double the guard on the torture chambers, Turrigan commands after reviewing intelligence reports. We have many more vipers to expose before the empire is cleansed. Her meaning spreads through whispered warnings. Anyone might face accusation. Any marriage might hide treason. Any woman might burn as a witch or die as an adulteress depending on political needs. The randomness adds to the terror, keeping everyone off balance, dependent on the regent's favor for survival. Fatima breaks completely on the 4th day. Her confession expands to include impossible crimes across impossible geography. She admits to affairs in cities she's never visited, with men she's never met, during times when witnesses place her elsewhere. The inconsistencies matter nothing against the confession's political utility. She names General Temuga. The torturer reports with satisfaction, claims he forced himself upon her repeatedly. Turrigan smiles at this unexpected bonus. Temuga commands loyalists from the previous regime, men who might contest her authority. His execution for adultery would scatter his supporters without risking open warfare. Fatima's torture-born lies solve military problems through civilian courts. The palace transforms into a factory of accusation. Scribes work overtime documenting confessions. Torturers operate in shifts to maintain productivity. Courtiers practice denunciations against future needs. The infrastructure of political murder disguised as moral enforcement reaches industrial efficiency. Fatima requests the mercy of poison, a guard reports. She offers information about hidden gold reserves in exchange for a gentle death. Turagene considers this bargain with merchants' calculation. Poison leaves no dramatic spectacle for public consumption, but hidden gold funds, future accusations, enables more elaborate demonstrations of justice. She grants the request, understanding that mercy too can serve political purposes. The disappointment ripples through the court when Fatima's execution changes from public spectacle to private termination. Those who anticipated entertainment grumble quietly about lost opportunities. The regent notes these complaints, filing away names of those who show insufficient gratitude for her justice's flexibility. Fatima dies at sunset, poison replacing the scheduled blade. Her confession stands regardless, naming names that echo through arrest warrants and property seizures. The general she implicated under torture faces his own interrogation within hours. The web of accusation spreads according to Turagen's design. My husband honored the sanctity of marriage. The jeweler pleads for his wife's life. These charges are impossible. We have witnesses. Your witnesses are suspect, Turagene interrupts with calculated coldness. Perhaps they too hide corruption behind false testimony. Shall we investigate them as well? The threat silences protests more effectively than any torture. The jeweler retreats, understanding that defending his wife might condemn his entire household. Better to let one die than risk total destruction. He signs the documents accepting her guilt, trading her life for his remaining family's survival. The torture chambers fill with new residents, as Fatima's confession generates cascading arrests. Each person named names others under questioning. The network of accusation expands exponentially, reaching into every corner of government. Turagen orchestrates this symphony of suffering with conductor's precision. We've uncovered a conspiracy of adultery, she announces to the assembled court. These women use their bodies as weapons against imperial stability. Their executions will cleanse our sacred bloodlines. The courtiers applaud with desperate enthusiasm. Each clap a prayer against accusation. Some wonder privately how adultery becomes conspiracy, how personal betrayal transforms into political treason. But questions remain unspoken in throats that value attachment to heads. The jeweler's wife breaks on the second day, her confession aligning perfectly with Turagen's requirements. She admits to seducing ministers who opposed the regent's tax policies. Her supposed lovers include merchants who competed with royal monopolies. Every word strengthens Turagen's economic control while eliminating commercial rivals. Schedule her execution alongside the general, the regent commands. Let the people see how corruption spreads through all classes. The double execution promises spectacular entertainment. Noble blood and common blood mixing on the same platform demonstrates justice's blindness to rank. In truth, both die for the same crime of inconveniencing Turagen's ambitions. Their supposed adultery merely provides legal cover for political murder. The palace torture chambers operate at capacity, processing accusations with mechanical efficiency. Professional confessors work in shifts, extracting admissions tailored to political needs. The infrastructure of interrogation becomes as organized as any government department, complete with budgets and performance reviews. The Western merchants grow nervous, Turagen's spymaster reports. Some speak of relocating to avoid accusation. Let them run, the regent replies. Their flight proves guilt. We'll confiscate abandoned property as evidence of conscience. The trap closes from all directions. Stay and risk accusation. Flee and confirm suspicion. The only safety lies in total submission to Turagen's authority, and even that provides no guarantee. Today's ally becomes tomorrow's victim, as political needs shift. More women fill the dungeons, as the conspiracy of adultery expands through forced confessions. Mothers name daughters, sisters implicate siblings. The bonds of family shatter against the machinery of accusation. Each broken relationship serves Turagin's purpose, isolating potential opponents, destroying support networks that might enable resistance. "My lady shows great wisdom," a minister declares during council. "These revelations of corruption vindicate your righteous rule." Others echo the sentiment with varying degrees of conviction. Those who speak loudest often hide the deepest fears. Performance of loyalty becomes high art in Turagin's court, where insufficient enthusiasm brings suspicion and excessive praise suggests mockery. The narrow path of survival wins between extremes. The execution platform rises higher than ever before, accommodating the special requirements of a double noble death. Carpenters work through the night, while guards clear viewing areas for anticipated crowds. The spectacle promises to surpass previous displays in both drama and political significance. Fatima's death generates its own aftermath as her confessions named conspirators face judgment. Some flee immediately, confirming guilt through absence. Others attempt defense, discovering the futility of arguing against torture-extracted testimony. The wise confess quickly, hoping cooperation might spare their children if not themselves. The regent's justice reveals heaven's will. The court shamans declare, after consulting their bones. The gods themselves guide her hand in cleansing corruption. Divine endorsement adds religious authority to political persecution. Those who question Turagin's methods now challenge heaven itself. The combination of earthly and spiritual power creates unassailable authority for whatever horrors serve her purposes. The jeweler watches his wife's final preparations from his compound walls. Tomorrow she dies for crimes invented in torture chambers, her death purchasing his compliance with whatever terms Turagin demands. His trade routes become royal property through marriage bed accusations. The personal transforms into political with surgical precision. "Bring me the southern governor's wives," Turagin commands after reviewing territorial reports. All three show signs of corruption. The plural execution promises unprecedented spectacle. 3 wives, 1 husband, multiple accusations of interconnected adultery. The logistics challenge even experienced executioners, but the political rewards justify any effort. The southern governor's resistance to new taxes ends when his entire household faces death or enslavement. Each accusation follows careful calculation. Turagin identifies political obstacles, evaluates personal vulnerabilities, then crafts appropriate charges. Adultery works for wives. Sodomy eliminates unmarried opponents. Witchcraft removes religious critics. The toolkit of accusation adapts to every need. We live in righteous times. Courtiers assure each other while calculating their own vulnerabilities. The regent's wisdom protects our sacred traditions. The words ring hollow in halls where screams echo from below. Everyone knows the truth beneath legal fictions. But acknowledging reality means joining the condemned. Better to praise the executioner than question the executions. Survival demands complicity in collective delusion. The torture chambers expand to accommodate increased demand. New specialists arrive from distant provinces, bringing innovative techniques for confession extraction. The profession of pain becomes a respectable career path for those with strong stomachs and flexible consciences. Turagin pays well for efficiency in manufacturing guilt. Tomorrow's executions will demonstrate the empire's moral strength, the regent announces at evening feast. Let all witness the fate of those who betray sacred bonds. The court toasts her wisdom while mentally reviewing their own potential vulnerabilities. Marriage becomes minefield, where any misstep triggers destruction. The safest path avoids all personal connections that might enable accusation. Isolation offers better odds than intimacy in Turagin's empire. The truth about these accusations would only emerge after the bodies were burned, when new regimes examined old records, when historians traced the patterns of political murder disguised as moral enforcement. But tonight, the torture chambers sing with fresh screams, while tomorrow's victims await their turn on platforms built from legal lies and political necessity. The silk curtains ripple as armed guards burst through the doorway. Princess Alakai of the Jin dynasty barely has time to drop her teacup before rough hands seize her arms. Her servants scatter like frightened birds while the captain reads charges that transform her from honored guest to condemned criminal. Adultery with a palace musician. 3 witnesses ready to testify. The Mongol prince she married 4 years ago wants his Chinese bride gone. The mathematics of her situation crystallize with brutal clarity. She came to this marriage as living treaty, her body the seal on an alliance between empires. Now that same alliance crumbles under Mongol expansion, making her presence inconvenient rather than essential. The musician they named died 2 weeks ago in a suspicious fall. The witnesses wear silk robes purchased yesterday. Every detail screams fabrication, but truth holds no currency in this transaction. They drag her through palace corridors while courtiers press against walls to avoid contamination. Yesterday, these same people bowed to her rank. Today, they avert their eyes from the condemned woman whose foreign blood marks her as expendable. The dungeon door slams with finality that echoes through stone passages. Other cells hold similar prisoners. A Tangut princess married to secure trade routes. A Uyghur noble's daughter whose dowry included strategic oases. Korean aristocrats. Persian merchants' wives. Each woman represents a diplomatic calculation that no longer balances favorably. The empire's expansion renders their alliance value obsolete. Adultery charges provide convenient disposal methods for human treaties written in marriage contracts. My father commands 10,000 soldiers. Princess Alakai tells her guards with diminishing confidence. He will demand answers for this treatment. The guards exchange knowing looks. Her father's armies matter less now that Mongol forces have tripled in size. The marriage that once brought peace now impedes conquest. Her execution might even provoke the war that justifies complete annexation. The political algebra works perfectly once human variables are reduced to 0. Dawn brings the torturer with his specialized tools. Princess Alakai learns how confession emerges through careful application of pressure. Her denials transform into admissions as joints separate and flesh tears. The musician she barely knew becomes her passionate lover in this fiction written through pain. Each scream adds another detail to the narrative her husband requires. Describe your meetings. The torturer suggests between applications of heated bronze. Name your accomplices in dishonoring your marriage bed. The lies flow easier than blood from her wounds. She confesses to trysts during diplomatic banquets, assigns passion to professional courtesy, transforms court musicians into eager paramours. The torturer notes each detail with satisfaction. Foreign wives make ideal victims. Their families sit too distant for immediate retaliation. Their deaths create useful diplomatic incidents. Their confessions can implicate any rival the accuser needs removed. In the adjacent cell, a Karaite princess undergoes similar treatment. Her husband seeks remarriage to a more politically advantageous bride. The adultery charge solves multiple problems while maintaining legal propriety. She names lovers from her homeland, men who died years ago in border skirmishes. The dead make perfect accomplices, unable to contradict torture-extracted testimony. Your execution will demonstrate Mongol justice. The guard informs Princess Alakai after her confession is complete. Your father will understand we treat all wives equally under the law. The equality of death masks the inequality of accusation. Mongol wives face trial with tribal support. Foreign brides stand alone, their families distant, their allies calculating whether defense merits risk. The system filters victims through origin as much as accusation. Those without local protection feed the execution machinery at higher rates. A Korean princess in the corner cell hasn't spoken since her arrival. The charges against her involve a stable boy who disappeared before trial. Her silence stems from recognizing the futility of protest. She saw her predecessor executed 6 months ago on similar charges. The position of foreign wife to ambitious Mongol nobles carries a death sentence delayed only by political convenience. They will demand compensation for my death, Princess Alakai insists with fading hope. The treaty specified protection. Treaties between unequal powers become suggestions rather than obligations. Her marriage contract promised safety in exchange for alliance, but contracts written by the weak bind only the weak. The strong reinterpret terms according to convenience. Her protection clause evaporates against her husband's need for a different wife. The torture chamber processes foreign wives with mechanical efficiency. Each confession follows similar patterns: passionate affairs with inappropriate partners, detailed descriptions of betrayal, names of accomplices who conveniently cannot refute accusations. The template adapts to each woman's origin while serving identical purposes. The Persian ambassador's wife broke within hours. A torturer reports to his supervisor. She named 12 lovers, including 2 eunuchs. The impossibility of the confession guarantees its acceptance. Physical evidence matters less than political utility. The ambassador will protest, demand investigation, threaten retaliation, but his wife will die regardless, her execution timed to coincide with trade negotiations. Her death becomes leverage, transforming diplomatic protection into diplomatic pressure. Princess Alakai watches through cell bars as they drag the Tangut princess to her session. The woman maintains dignity despite shackles, holding her head high until the chamber door closes. Her screams begin within minutes. Another foreign bride learning that marriage contracts provide no sanctuary against political convenience. The systematic nature of these eliminations reveals careful planning. Accusations arrive in waves, timed to prevent unified response. By the time one kingdom protests a daughter's death, 3 more face similar charges. The diplomatic core fragments, each nation defending its own interests rather than uniting against common threat. Your confession requires expansion. The torturer informs Princess Alakai during her second session. Your husband needs additional names for completeness. She provides them through tears and agony. Merchants who showed her courtesy, translators who helped her navigate court protocols, guards assigned for her protection. Each name represents someone her husband once removed or ruined. Her torture serves as weapon against any who aided foreign wives' integration. The Korean princess finally speaks, but only to request writing materials. She composes a letter to her father in careful characters, explaining the situation without accusations that might worsen diplomatic relations. She understands her role as sacrifice to larger political games. Her death maintains fictions that enable continued negotiations between courts. My children, Princess Alakai gasps between sessions. They carry their father's blood. But children of foreign mothers occupy precarious positions. 2 foreign for full acceptance, 2 Mongol for complete rejection. Her execution orphans them in multiple ways. Their father will acknowledge them according to convenience. Their mother's family can't protect them across enemy borders. They exist in the spaces between identities, vulnerable to whoever controls their fate. A new arrival disrupts the cell's resigned atmosphere. Princess Mandukai of the Naiman, taken in recent conquest, refuses the established patterns. She names her accusers as rapists, her marriage as forced captivity, her predicted execution as murder disguised as justice. Her words echo through stone corridors until guards silence her with clubs. The wild ones learn eventually. A veteran guard observes. They all confess once the professionals begin their work, but Mandukai's defiance plants seeds of doubt. Other prisoners whisper about resistance, about refusing confessions regardless of pain. The conversations end when guards increase patrols, but the possibility of denying their torturer's narrative spreads through glances and gestures. Princess Alakai's formal confession spans 8 pages of lies extracted through methodical brutality. She signs with hands twisted by torture, each character a betrayal of truth for survival's false hope. The document travels to her husband for review while she returns to her cell to await scheduled death. The Jin ambassador requests audience regarding your fate, a guard mentions casually. Your execution has been postponed pending negotiations. Hope flares briefly before reality crushes it. Postponement means extended suffering, not salvation. Her father negotiates from weakness, offering concessions to delay rather than prevent her death. She becomes currency in transactions that value her potential execution over her actual life. The Persian ambassador's wife dies first, her execution timed to influence trade talks. Princess Alakai watches through cell windows as guards load the woman's children into slave wagons. Their father's diplomatic immunity doesn't extend to offspring of executed adulteresses. Another family destroyed by marriage alliances that became political liabilities. Your husband offers compromise. An official informs Princess Alakai after another week of negotiations. Slavery instead of death, provided you sign additional confessions implicating Jin court officials in broader conspiracies. The deal reveals her execution's true purpose. Not punishment for imaginary adultery, but leverage for intelligence gathering. Her signature on false documents provides justification for future aggression against her homeland. She trades death for betrayal, though both end in different forms of destruction. Princess Mandukai maintains her resistance through 3 sessions before breaking. Her confession emerges as incoherent rambling about crimes impossible to commit from captivity. The torturers accept it anyway. Coherence matters less than compliance. Her execution proceeds on schedule despite the confession's obvious fabrication. Foreign wives bring corruption. Princess Alakai hears guards discussing outside her cell. Their blood pollutes noble lines. Better to execute them all and marry proper Mongol women. The sentiment spreads through military ranks and noble courts. Foreign brides transform from diplomatic assets to security threats requiring elimination. Each execution justifies the next in escalating cycles of sanctioned xenophobia. Princess Alakai signs her expanded confession with numb resignation. The document implicates dozens of Jin officials in conspiracies that exist only in her torturer's imagination. Her betrayal purchases slavery over death, though she wonders which fate proves crueler. The slave markets at least offer possibility of eventual freedom. The execution ground provides only finality. Your children will serve in the palace, her husband informs her during their final meeting. They retain some privilege despite your crimes. His magnanimity masks calculation. Half foreign children serve useful purposes as translators and intermediaries. Their mixed blood makes them controllable through vulnerability. Neither fully accepted nor completely rejected, they exist at their father's sufferance. The Korean princess faces her execution with composed dignity that unsettles the crowd. She speaks no last words, offers no confession, acknowledges no guilt. Her silence resonates louder than any speech. The blade falls on a woman who refused to validate her murderer's narrative. Princess Alakai begins her new life in chains, spared death through diplomatic negotiation and expanded betrayal. Other foreign wives continue arriving in the cells she vacated. The cycle perpetuates itself. Alliance through marriage, political shift, accusation of adultery, torture for confession, execution, or enslavement. The formula proves too useful for abandonment. Word spreads among the border kingdoms. She overhears guards discussing. Fathers refuse marriage alliances, knowing their daughters face death when politics shift. But the refusals provide their own justification for aggression. Kingdoms that won't bind themselves through marriage must be bound through conquest. The execution of foreign wives serves multiple purposes in imperial expansion. Their deaths justify wars their lives were meant to prevent. Princess Alakai serves wine at her former husband's feast, her noble rank replaced by slave marks. The guests include her replacement, a Mongol general's daughter whose bloodline needs no foreign contamination. The new wife watches her predecessor, with curiosity tinged with warning. Today's honored bride becomes tomorrow's executed adulteress when convenience demands. From the slave quarters, she hears celebration mixed with execution drums. Another foreign princess meets her fate, while diplomats calculate response costs. The empire processes human treaties with mechanical efficiency, discarding worn alliances for fresh opportunities. Her letter to her father travels slowly through hostile territory. By the time it arrives, 3 more Jin princesses will face similar fates. The personal catastrophes aggregate into political crisis. Each executed daughter becomes casus belli for wars the Mongol Empire already planned. Princess Alakai survives through absolute submission, performing servitude while maintaining internal dignity. She watches her children grow between 2 worlds, claimed by neither, vulnerable to both. Their existence embodies the impossible position of hostage wives. Too valuable to ignore, too dangerous to protect, too foreign to fully accept. The cycle continues with seasonal regularity. Spring marriages seal new alliances. Summer campaigns test their strength. Autumn accusations remove inconvenient brides. Winter executions clear space for advantageous replacements. The machinery of diplomatic murder operates with calendar precision, but Princess Alakai notices cracks in the system. Mongol nobles grow wary of foreign brides who bring death sentences disguised as dowries. Neighboring kingdoms demand hostages rather than marriages. The execution grounds create more enemies than submission. Each murdered princess generates brothers seeking vengeance, fathers planning retaliation. Her own execution would have passed unnoticed in the empire's scope. Another foreign wife eliminated for political convenience. But her survival through slavery creates different consequences. She translates during negotiations, knowing both languages and their speakers' intentions. Her presence reminds diplomats that today's treaties become tomorrow's death sentences. The Jin propose new terms. She overhears during translation duties. No marriage alliances, trade agreements only. The evolution reflects hard lessons written in executed wives' blood. Kingdoms learn that binding through bodies leads to betrayal. The personal and political separate as survival strategy. But the Mongol expansion continues regardless, finding new justifications for conquest. Princess Alakai's impossible position mirrors thousands of forgotten women, married for alliance, murdered for convenience. Their bodies served as diplomatic currency in an economy that consumed them without conscience. She survived through accident of timing and expedience of betrayal. Others faced the blade for crimes of origin rather than action. The executioner's sword that spared her continues its work. Each dawn brings new foreign wives to judgment. Their screams echo through palace walls while their children join the ranks of stateless slaves. The empire built on horseback runs on the blood of women who crossed borders seeking peace and found only death. One hostage wife's execution would spark a war that consumed nations. Her name was Princess Sukbatar of the Oirats, and her death would transform from judicial murder to international catastrophe. The laughter spills from the brothel's upper windows, mixing with music from the stringed instruments and the clink of wine cups against brass. 3 streets away, the execution platform stands empty in the morning sun, its wood still stained from yesterday's blood. The same city holds both spaces. The same laws govern both transactions, yet only one ends in death. Inside the Golden Moon pleasure house, a Mongol captain tosses silver coins across the table while selecting his companion for the evening. The women wear silk robes that cost more than most herders see in a lifetime. Their profession carries no shame under Mongol law. The Yassa code protects them as it protects merchants and craftsmen. They pay taxes, own property, raise children who claim their father's names without question. The captain's wife waits at home, knowing exactly where her husband spends his evening. She tends their children and manages household accounts, understanding the boundaries of her position. Should she visit the Golden Moon herself? Should she take a lover in their marriage bed? The morning would find her kneeling on those stained planks while the executioner tests his blade. A merchant enters the brothel, fresh from witnessing an execution. His hands still shake as he orders wine. The goldsmith's wife, he mutters to anyone listening, caught with a travelling singer. Her children loaded into slave wagons before her head stopped rolling. The brothel women exchange knowing glances but continue their work. Their safety exists within these walls, protected by law and custom. Beyond these doors, married women navigate different rules written in blood and suspicion. The divide between permitted pleasure and forbidden passion cuts sharp as any executioner's sword. My youngest son starts his military training next month, the captain announces proudly. Born from my favorite here at the Golden Moon. The boy shows promise with a bow. No one questions the child's legitimacy. Mongol custom accepts children born outside marriage, provided their fathers acknowledge them. The captain's wife will welcome the boy into her household, raise him alongside her own children, because the law demands acceptance of what it simultaneously forbids her from creating. The Madam of the Golden Moon, a woman named Bayan, counts the evening's receipts with practiced efficiency. She survived 20 years in this trade, through understanding precisely where boundaries lie. Her establishment serves the powerful, provides outlet for desires that would destroy marriages if expressed within them. The gold she earns builds temples and funds caravans, transforming lust into legitimate commerce. The governor seeks entertainment for next week's feast. A messenger announces at the doorway, 20 of your finest, paid at triple rate. Bayan nods acceptance while calculating logistics. The same governor who hired her women executed his wife last winter for suspected adultery. The irony escapes no one, but survival requires selective blindness. The powerful make rules that bind others while exempting themselves through technicalities of payment and profession. A young wife enters through the back door, veil covering her face, hands trembling as she passes a note to Bayan. The madam reads quickly, then burns the paper in a lamp flame. Another woman seeking information about her husband's activities, desperate to know what threats might emerge from his pleasures. Knowledge becomes armor when accusation can arrive without warning. He visits twice weekly, Bayan reports quietly. Always the same girl. No political conversations, no suspicious meetings. You have nothing to fear from this direction. Relief floods the wife's features before she presses coins into Bayan's palm. Information about husband's brothel habits becomes another service the Golden Moon provides. Wives monitor their husbands' purchased pleasures while guarding against any sign of their own desire. The mathematics of survival require constant calculation. The captain finishes his third cup of wine, growing philosophical. Strange empire we've built. My concubines bear me sons without shame. My visits here merit no punishment. But should my wife smile too long at another man? He draws a finger across his throat. His companion refills his cup without comment. Working women learn early that philosophical musings about legal hypocrisies lead nowhere productive. The law exists as carved in stone. Understanding its contradictions means nothing against its enforcement. Better to profit from exceptions than protest restrictions. The Kerait prince brought his new bride here last week. Another customer mentions with barely concealed malice. Wanted her to learn proper techniques from professionals. The girl cried through the entire lesson. The brothel women shift uncomfortably at this violation of their space. Teaching terrified wives how to please demanding husbands falls outside their usual services, but refusing princely requests brings its own dangers. They performed the lesson while hating every moment, knowing the girl faced execution if she failed to satisfy her husband's expectations. Bayan remembers when the adultery laws first took effect. Business boomed as married men sought safe outlets for desires that could destroy their wives. The brothels expanded, upgraded, transformed from simple pleasure houses to complex institutions serving social pressure release. Every executed wife drove more custom through their doors. My cousin in the western provinces reports different customs. A silk merchant observes between negotiations for companionship. There, wives take lovers openly, provided they remain discreet. The local governor considers it civilized. Silence greets this observation. Regional variations in law enforcement create hope and terror in equal measure. A woman safe in one province faces death in another for identical behavior. The geographic lottery of women's survival depends on local governors' interpretations of carved stone laws. The evening progresses through its familiar rhythms. Money changes hands. Pleasure gets purchased. Wives wait at home. The machinery of sanctioned desire operates smoothly within its prescribed boundaries. Everyone understands their role in this carefully choreographed performance of permitted and forbidden. Bring me the virgin from Kashgar, a general demands with the confidence of high rank. I tire of experienced women. Bayan bows while internally calculating. No virgin works the golden moon, but the general expects his fantasies fulfilled. She'll assign her youngest-looking worker, coach her in performed innocence, hope the deception satisfies. The distance between truth and performance narrows to nothing in rooms where gold purchases whatever reality customers require. A commotion outside breaks the evening's flow. Guards drag a woman past the brothel windows, her fine clothes marking noble status. Another wife accused, another family destroyed, another reminder of boundaries written in blood. The brothel customers pause their pleasures to watch, some with sympathy, others with satisfaction. The jeweler's wife, someone identifies. Her husband found letters from an admirer. Nothing physical, just words of longing, but enough for accusation. The brothel women return to their duties, but the reminder lingers. Words alone can kill when written by the wrong hands. Their own correspondence remains strictly professional. Love letters become death sentences when addressed to married women. The heart's expression carries capital punishment for those bound by marriage contracts. The captain prepares to leave as dawn approaches. His favorite helps him arrange his clothes, ensuring no obvious signs of the night's activities. His wife will smell perfume and wine, but say nothing. Acknowledgement brings suspicion. Better to perform ignorance than risk accusation. Same time next week, he promises with casual certainty. His legal right to pleasure faces no challenge. The exchange of gold transforms potential adultery into sanctioned commerce. His wife's theoretical same desire would transform into capital crime, regardless of payment. The blade discriminates by gender, not action. Bayan secures the night's earnings in her strongbox while calculating tributes owed to various officials. The brothel operates through careful balance of payments and permissions. Each executed wife reminds authorities why places like the Golden Moon serve essential functions, better regulated vice than domestic explosions. The new governor's wife visited yesterday. Her assistant whispers during morning cleanup, sought herbs to prevent conception. She fears pregnancy might prompt her husband to seek younger replacement. The request reveals another calculation in married women's survival mathematics. Fertility brings vulnerability when husbands tire of aging wives. The brothel's discreet services extend beyond pleasure to protection, providing remedies that might delay execution by maintaining desirability. Morning light reveals the execution platform's fresh preparations. New planks replace blood-soaked wood. The crowds will gather soon for another demonstration of justice applied to female desire. Meanwhile, the Golden Moon's customers return home to wives who pretend ignorance of their activities. I sometimes wonder, Bayan's oldest worker muses while counting her earnings, what would happen if wives could purchase pleasure as freely as their husbands? The question hangs unanswered because its implications threaten the entire structure. The system depends on asymmetric enforcement. Equal application would collapse the carefully maintained boundaries between permitted and forbidden. The brothels exist precisely because wives cannot. News arrives of yesterday's execution numbers. 3 wives in the capital, 5 in the western districts, 2 in the southern provinces. The tally resembles merchant inventories more than human casualties. Each number represents a family destroyed, children enslaved, property redistributed. The arithmetic of moral enforcement continues its bloody calculations. My daughter reaches marriageable age. One customer confides to his chosen companion. I seek a husband who frequents brothels rather than taking lovers. Safer for her survival. The logic reflects adapted strategies for an impossible system. Fathers who once sought faithful husbands now prefer those who separate desire from domestic danger. The brothels become oddly protective institutions, channeling male impulse away from accusations that kill wives. Bayan reviews her ledgers with satisfaction tinged by awareness. Every coin earned represents a married woman who didn't die for her husband's desires. The Golden Moon serves as pressure valve for a system that would explode without sanctioned outlets. Yet the very existence of such outlets highlights the deadly restrictions placed on wives. The minister's wife sent another payment, her assistant reports. She thanks you for the information about her husband's activities, says it helps her prepare appropriate responses. Information becomes currency in survival economies. Wives pay gold to monitor husbands' pleasures, calculating threats from purchased passion. The brothel trades in more than flesh. It deals in intelligence that might spare women from accusation through careful performance of ignorance. The morning shift arrives as night workers retire. The Golden Moon operates continuously, serving desire around the clock. Its existence stands monument to the Empire's contradictions. The same society that stones adulteresses maintains elaborate infrastructure for male pleasure. The mathematics balance through gendered application of consequences. Ready the upstairs rooms, Bayan commands. The garrison commanders meet here at noon. They'll want privacy for their discussions and pleasure after. Politics and pleasure intertwine in the brothel's silk-draped chambers. Deals struck between purchased embraces shape the Empire's future. The women who serve these powerful men absorb secrets worth more than gold. Yet they survive through silence, understanding that knowledge expressed becomes accusation, inviting execution. A young bride arrives seeking Bayan's counsel. Married 3 days, terrified of her husband's expectations, desperate for advice that might prevent future accusation. The madam provides gentle instruction while hating the necessity. Teaching wives to perform pleasure like professionals ensures survival in marriages that punish authentic desire. Remember, Bayan tells the frightened girl, your safety lies in his satisfaction. Show too little enthusiasm, risk accusation of coldness that drives him elsewhere. Show too much, risk suspicion of experience that suggests adultery. Walk the narrow path between. The bride leaves with knowledge that might preserve her life. Another woman learning to navigate impossible boundaries. The brothel serves as strange academy, where wives study survival through performed submission. The lessons save lives while breaking spirits. The southern provinces report new execution methods. A traveling merchant shares over morning wine. They drown adulteresses now, say it's cleaner than blades. Innovation in execution methodology reflects the practice's normalization. Different regions develop preferred techniques like craftsmen perfecting trade skills. The machinery of death evolves through repetition, seeking efficiency in transforming wives into warnings. Bayan closes the ledgers as full daylight arrives. Another night's success measured in gold earned and blood not spilled. The golden moon continues its essential service, providing outlet for desires that kill when expressed in marriage beds. The contradiction stands naked as any working woman, obvious to all yet unacknowledged by those who write laws in stone. Prepare the special room, she commands her staff. The one with hidden passages. Another wife seeks evidence of her husband's activities. She pays triple for confirmed information about his plans. The brothel's architecture reflects its multiple purposes. Public rooms for open commerce, private chambers for purchased pleasure, secret passages for information gathering that might prevent executions. Every space serves the complex ecology of desire and survival in an empire that permits everything for men, nothing for wives. The morning's first customer arrives before the blood dries on the execution platform 3 streets away. He seeks comfort after watching his neighbor's wife die for suspected adultery. The proximity of death sharpens desire for life. The brothels fill fastest after public executions, as if purchased pleasure could ward off mortality's reminder. She proclaimed innocence to the end, he tells his chosen companion. Said her husband fabricated evidence for inheritance. The blade fell regardless. Truth matters nothing against accusation backed by law. The brothel women understand this better than most. Their survival depends on remaining outside marriage's deadly boundaries. They trade respectability for safety, accepting social stigma over execution risk. The cycles continue with mechanical precision. Husbands visit brothels. Wives die for adultery. Children enter slavery. Property changes hands. The golden moon prospers, while execution platforms consume fresh lumber. Each feeds the other in an economy built on female bodies valued differently by context. The Khan's new laws increase punishment for false accusation. Bayan's assistant reports from the morning's news. 3 witnesses now, not 2. Small comfort for the dead. Incremental reforms cannot repair fundamental fractures. The system's architecture depends on inequality. Adjusting details while maintaining structure merely refines the machinery of oppression. Wives still die. Brothels still prosper. The balance maintains through blood and gold. The preparation for noon's military gathering intensifies. These powerful men shape imperial policy between purchased pleasures. Their decisions determine which wives live, which die, which regions enforce laws strictly or loosely. The brothel serves as informal court where justice gets negotiated through transaction. My sister faces accusation. One worker confides during preparation. Her husband found a poem she wrote about spring flowers, claims its coded message to a lover. Paranoia transforms everything into evidence. Poems become confessions. Smiles suggest guilt. Kindness implies conspiracy. The execution machinery runs on suspicion fed by fear. Even brothel workers, protected by profession, worry for sisters and daughters bound in marriage. The golden moon stands as monument to the empire's fundamental contradiction. Its existence proves the lie beneath moral legislation. The same desires that purchase legal pleasure in these rooms demand death when expressed in marriage beds. The sword falls on wives, while gold flows to prostitutes for identical actions separated only by context and contract. This double standard would claim its most famous victim in broad daylight. She would die not for what she did in darkness, but for what her death could achieve in the harsh light of political calculation. The child's scream cuts through morning prayers like a blade through silk. 7-year-old Temujin watches from behind his mother's skirts as guards drag her toward the platform. His small fingers dig into the rough wool while his world collapses into incomprehensible fragments. Mother in chains, father's cold satisfaction, the crowd's hungry anticipation. Words that make no sense to a child who still believes in the safety of his mother's arms. The executioner's assistant lifts him with practiced efficiency, iron shackles ready for his thin wrists. His sisters wail from the slave wagon, their noble clothes already stripped away. The transformation from prince to property happens faster than his young mind can process. Yesterday, he practiced archery in the palace courtyard. Today, he learns that mother's love cannot protect against father's accusation. She betrayed our bloodline, his father announces to the assembled nobles. The words mean nothing to Temujin, who only knows his mother sang him to sleep and taught him to write his first characters. The crowd cheers justice, while he screams for mercy they won't grant. His voice breaks against their bloodlust like waves against stone cliffs. The blade rises above his mother's bowed head. Temujin strains against the guard's grip, calling her name until his throat burns raw. She turns at his voice, their eyes meeting across the platform. Her lips move in what might be prayer or promise or simple goodbye. The moment stretches eternal before steel ends it with whispered finality. Blood sprays across wooden planks while his mother's body crumples forward. The crowd erupts in savage approval. Temujin's scream transforms into something primal, wordless grief that marks the death of childhood innocence. The guard carries him toward the slave wagon, where his sisters huddle together. Their noble blood pools worthless on the platform behind them. Lady Chabby's grandson stands among the watchers, only 4 years old, but forced to witness his grandmother's execution for adultery supposedly committed before his birth. He doesn't understand the charges, only that Baba won't tell him any more stories. The inheritance his family gains through her death means nothing to a child who just wants his grandmother's embrace. His tears fall silently while adults calculate property divisions. The slave markets overflow with noble children that season. Brothers separated from sisters, infants torn from wet nurses, toddlers who still call for mothers whose heads decorate city walls. The traders evaluate them like livestock, checking teeth and testing strength. Noble birth means nothing once the execution platform claims maternal bloodlines. 8-year-old Mandukai watches her mother confess to crimes under torture, each scream carving memories that will never heal. The confession names Mandukai herself as witness to impossible meetings. The child stands before the tribunal, commanded to confirm her mother's adultery. Her denial brings beatings. Her silence brings threats. Finally, broken and bleeding, she speaks the lies they demand. Her mother dies, knowing her daughter's testimony sealed the execution. The betrayal forced from an 8-year-old's lips destroys more than family bonds. Mandukai enters slavery, carrying the weight of matricide through coerced perjury. The system that demands children testify against mothers creates wounds that fester across generations. Some children face choices between testimony and shared execution. 10-year-old Kaidu refuses to confirm his mother's forced confession despite 3 days of starvation. The judge orders him to share her fate, but politics intervene. A rival needs the boy's future military service. Kaidu watches his mother die, then enters his enemy's household as permanent hostage. Survival through betrayal becomes the orphan's inheritance. The daughters face particular cruelty in slavery. Future wives themselves, they carry their mother's supposed corruption like contagion. Owners use them harshly, believing adultery passes through bloodlines. 12-year-old Alakai scrubs floors in the house where she once played with silk dolls. Her mother's execution for political convenience matters less than the stain it leaves on her prospects. Noble boys at least retain potential military value. Slavers train them for future service, though advancement remains forever limited by maternal disgrace. They might rise to command units but never armies. Their mothers' executions create glass ceilings written in blood and suspicion. The empire wastes tactical genius because of bedsheets accusations. 9-year-old Bayan hides in palace kitchens as guards search for his mother. He hears her capture, her screams during interrogation, her final words on the platform. The kitchen staff pretend not to see him, understanding that helping means sharing his fate. He remains frozen for hours after the execution drums fall silent. When hunger finally drives him from hiding, the slavers wait with practiced patience. The economic impact ripples through generations. Children sold cheap flood labor markets. Their noble education makes them valuable as scribes and translators once properly broken. The empire builds administrative efficiency on the backs of orphaned aristocrats. Each executed mother contributes her children to the bureaucratic machinery. 5-year-old Kulan doesn't understand why her father brings her to watch her mother die. He explains it as necessity, a lesson in law's absolute nature. She only sees mother falling, blood spreading, strangers cheering. The trauma manifests in nightmares that follow her through slavery into adulthood. Her father remarries within the week, her stepmother wearing her mother's jewelry. The psychological damage spreads like plague through slave quarters. Children who watch maternal executions grow into adults who trust nothing and no one. They flinch from authority, expect betrayal, prepare for abandonment. The empire creates a generation marked by witnessed matricide. Their service comes wrapped in barely suppressed rage. Some fathers show mercy through selective blindness. Lord Arik ensures his children visit distant relatives during their mother's execution. They learn of her death through whispers rather than witnessed horror. The kindness feels hollow against slavery's reality, but at least they don't carry the image of her final moments. Small mercies measured against vast cruelties. 7-year-old twins, Batbayar and Balomar, cling together in the slave wagon, their mother's blood still splattered on their festival clothes. They'd been promised honey cakes after the ceremony. Instead, they watched her head roll while father counted his profit. The betrayal cuts deeper than loss. They enter slavery, understanding that parental protection exists only in stories. The specialized slave markets for execution orphans develop their own procedures. Traders examine children for signs of rebellion or resignation. The ones who still show fight bring higher prices for hard labor. The broken ones suit domestic service. Each child gets sorted according to their trauma response. The machinery of exploitation runs on precisely calibrated misery. 11-year-old Sanai attempts escape from the slave caravan, seeking to die free rather than live owned. Guards catch her at the river, drag her back for public flogging. Her defiance inspires 2 other children to attempt their own flights. The traders respond with increased chains and decreased rations. Collective punishment ensures individual compliance. The religious implications torment children raised to honor ancestors. Their mothers died as criminals, denied proper burial rites. No offerings can reach dishonored spirits. 6-year-old Ganbatar builds tiny shrines from pebbles and grass, praying for mother's ghost despite theological impossibility. The guards destroy his altars and beat him for heretical practice. Faith becomes another casualty of judicial murder. Noble families sometimes purchase their grandchildren from slavery, but the redemption comes wrapped in conditions. The children must never speak of their mothers. They occupy servant positions in households they should inherit. 13-year-old Nergui serves wine to cousins who inherited his birthright. His silence buys survival at dignity's expense. The few who escape slavery through luck or cunning carry permanent marks. Without family names or documented lineage, they exist as social ghosts. 15-year-old Oyunbileg fled the mines, survived through begging, eventually joined a monastery under false pretenses. He lives in constant fear of discovery, knowing his mother's execution makes him permanently property. Some children witness multiple family executions. 8-year-old Tomo Batar watches his mother die for adultery, then his aunt 6 months later on similar charges. The family patriarch eliminates inconvenient women through bedroom accusations. The boy understands the pattern but lacks power to prevent it. He enters slavery knowing his sisters face similar fates when they reach marriageable age. The youngest victims don't comprehend their losses immediately. 2-year-old Narantuya calls for Mama through 3 days of travel before accepting the slave woman assigned as caretaker. She grows up knowing something vital is missing but lacking words for the absence. The execution she can't remember shapes her life through negative space. Winter brings particular hardship for execution orphans. Slave quarters provide minimal heat. Children raised in silk freeze in wool rags. Disease spreads through packed dormitories. 4-year-old Tenga coughs blood while working the bellows, his noble constitution unsuited for manual labor. He dies, calling for his mother in delirium. The slavers note his loss as minor inventory reduction. Some develop Stockholm syndrome with their captors. 9-year-old Altan bonds with the trader who showed minor kindness during transport. He works harder to please this surrogate authority, desperate for any approval after witnessing parental betrayal. The psychological manipulation becomes another tool for ensuring compliance. Love's absence makes children vulnerable to its poorest substitutes. The sexual exploitation of female execution, orphans, remains officially forbidden but practically common. 12-year-old Sarangerel learns that her mother's supposed crime becomes excuse for her own violation. Adultery in the blood, her owner claims, while destroying her childhood. The cycle of accusation enables cascading abuse across generations. Male children face different but parallel exploitation. Forced into military service at brutal young ages, they become expendable frontline troops. 14-year-old Gantulga dies in his first battle, charging enemy lines with the desperate courage of someone with nothing left to lose. His mother's execution guaranteed his own through different means. The rare reunions between separated siblings bring mixed blessings. 16-year-old Erda Nekimeg finds her younger brother in the same mining camp. They barely recognize each other after 8 years apart. Their shared trauma creates bonds while highlighting losses. They work side by side, planning escapes they'll never attempt. The comfort of family presence battles the pain of remembering why they're there. Educational opportunities vanish with maternal execution. 7-year-old Sukbartar showed promise as a scholar before his mother's death. In slavery, he hauls water and tends fires. His keen mind atrophies from lack of use. The empire loses generations of potential through systematic destruction of noble families. Each executed mother takes her children's futures to the grave. The children who remember their lives before execution suffer most acutely. 10-year-old Batjargal dreams of his bedroom, his toys, his mother's voice. He wakes to slave quarters and remembered screams. The contrast between past privilege and current bondage creates psychological torture worse than physical abuse. Memory becomes another implement of suffering. Some find solace in shared experiences. Groups of execution orphans create surrogate families in slavery, protecting younger children, sharing scarce resources. 13-year-old Oyunar mothers, 3 younger girls whose mothers died on the same platform. Their constructed kinship provides stability in chaos. The human capacity for connection survives even systematic destruction. Religious authorities debate the theological status of execution orphans. Born legitimate but tainted by maternal crime, they occupy liminal spiritual space. Can they achieve enlightenment despite their mother's sins? Do they carry corruption in their blood? 6-year-old Tengiz listens to monks argue his soul's potential while scrubbing their floors. The abstract theology means less than the concrete chains. A few exceptional children attract noble attention through remarkable abilities. 15-year-old Berta demonstrates such skill with languages that a minister purchases her as translator. She serves the same government that executed her mother, swallowing rage with each interpreted word. Success requires complicity in the system that destroyed her family. Survival demands collaboration with murderers. The physical marks of slavery overlay emotional scars. Whip marks cross brand burns on young backs. Malnutrition stunts growth. Hard labor breaks bodies before they fully form. 8-year-old Temuga looks decades older after 3 years in the quarries. His mother died to eliminate political inconvenience. He pays the price in premature aging and permanent injury. Some children internalize their mother's supposed guilt. 11-year-old Munker believes his mother truly committed adultery, despite witnessing her forced confession. The shame accompanies him through slavery, making him grateful for punishments he thinks he deserves. The system's cruelest success lies in victims who accept their victimization as justice. Weather becomes another enemy for children raised in comfort. 9-year-old Kara nearly freezes during her first winter in slavery, her body unprepared for exposure. She survives missing 3 toes to frostbite. The physical reminders of class descent mark execution orphans throughout their lives. Their bodies tell stories of fall from grace. Traders develop specialized techniques for breaking noble children's spirits. Forced to watch other executions, to clean platforms, to carry heads in baskets, they learn their potential fate. 5-year-old Zolzaya vomits while washing blood from execution planks. The trader beats her for weakness, then assigns her the task daily until she stops reacting. Desensitization becomes survival skill. The luckiest execution orphans find positions as household slaves to compassionate owners. These remain minorities in systems designed for exploitation. Most face daily reminders of their fallen status through casual cruelty. 7-year-old Arionbold serves the family that testified against his mother. They treat him as living trophy of their successful accusation. Some maintain hope through fantastic thinking. 6-year-old Nandin believes her mother escaped execution, that the blood belonged to someone else. She waits for rescue that will never come, inventing elaborate stories about her mother's hidden survival. The fantasy preserves sanity while preventing acceptance. Hope becomes another form of torture when reality offers none. The economics of execution orphans create perverse incentives throughout society. Accusations against mothers with many children bring profitable slave hauls. Traders calculate potential harvests when evaluating which wives face denunciation. 8-year-old Delja and his 5 siblings represent significant profit from their mother's judicial murder. Their existence encouraged her death rather than protected against it. Physical beauty becomes curse rather than blessing for female execution orphans. Pretty daughters of executed mothers attract worse fates than plain ones. 12-year-old Solongo learns to dirty her face, hunch her shoulders, hide the features that might draw attention. Invisibility offers better odds than attractiveness in slave quarters, where her mother's supposed crime justifies any violation. The seasonal cycles affect execution orphans particularly harshly. Spring brings memories of festivals they'll never attend. Summer reminds them of gardens they'll never play in. Autumn harvests food they'll never taste. Winter cold penetrates bodies that once wore fur. 3-year-old Batbayar doesn't understand why the celebrations he glimpses through windows exclude him now. Some older children attempt to preserve family histories through hidden means. 14-year-old Tomur carves his lineage on hidden wooden tablets, recording names the empire once forgotten. His mother's execution intended to erase their line. He resists through secret documentation, knowing discovery means death. Memory becomes rebellion when authority demands amnesia. The medical needs of execution orphans receive minimal attention. Injuries from labor go untreated. Illnesses spread through packed quarters. Trauma manifests in behaviors that bring punishment rather than care. 5-year-old Odval stops speaking after her mother's execution. Slavers beat her for defiance rather than recognizing selective mutism. The psychological wounds remain invisible to those who inflict them. Education in slavery focuses on obedience rather than advancement. Former noble children learn enough literacy for basic tasks but face punishment for displaying greater knowledge. 10-year-old Ganzorig hides his ability to read classical texts, understanding that intelligence threatens those who prefer their property ignorant. Forced stupidity becomes another survival strategy. The marriage prospects for female execution orphans remain grotesquely limited. Some become concubines to men who fetishize their fallen status. Others face forced marriages to criminals or debtors. 16-year-old Oyuntuya discovers her sale to a brothel, her mother's execution used to justify sexual slavery. The cycles of exploitation compound across generations. Male execution orphans face military conscription at younger ages than free children. 11-year-old Batu trains with weapons too heavy for his malnourished frame. The Empire uses them as expendable shock troops, their lives worth less than equipment. His mother died for political convenience. He'll die for tactical advantage. The methods differ, but the calculation remains identical. Some children develop trauma bonds with fellow orphans that complicate later relationships. Trust becomes impossible when your first betrayal came from parents. Love seems dangerous when it led to mother's death. 13-year-old Nktuya pushes away kindness, expecting accusations behind every gesture. The execution platform's shadow extends across all future connections. Religious conversion offers escape for some execution orphans. Monasteries and temples accept children seeking to renounce worldly attachments they've already lost. 9-year-old Batsurig finds peace in Buddhist teachings about suffering's universality. His mother's execution becomes one more example of life's fundamental pain rather than unique catastrophe. Philosophy provides framework for processing incomprehensible loss. The children who remember their mother's innocence face particular psychological burdens. Knowing the accusations were false while being unable to prove it creates cognitive dissonance that manifests in various ways. 15-year-old Narambata channels his rage into secret plans for revenge he'll never enact. The fantasy of justice sustains him through slavery's daily humiliations. Some develop survival skills that serve them if they achieve freedom. Years of navigating slavery's dangers create hypervigilance and strategic thinking. 16-year-old Otgon Bayar escapes the mines through careful planning and brutal pragmatism. His mother's execution taught him that law serves power rather than justice. He applies the lesson by operating outside legal structures entirely. The mortality rates among execution orphans far exceed general slave populations. Suicide, disease, accidents, and murder claim them at devastating rates. The empire treats these losses as acceptable overhead in the business of political persecution. Each dead child represents a mother's execution, achieving its full purpose of lineage termination. But survival creates its own complications. Adult execution orphans carry their trauma into whatever lives they build. They flinch at authority, expect betrayal, prepare for loss. 18-year-old Zolzaya works as free laborer after aging out of slavery, but she still wakes screaming from nightmares of the platform. Freedom doesn't erase the formative experience of watching your mother's judicial murder. The handful who achieve significant success despite their origins remain forever marked. 20-year-old Ganbold commands a minor military unit through exceptional skill, but whispers of his mother's execution limit advancement. He fights harder, achieves more, yet remains the adulteress's son in discussions of promotion. The stain passes through bloodlines as permanently as any inheritance. One child of an executed adulteress would grow up to change everything. Berta, daughter of a noble woman, executed for political convenience, survived slavery through cunning and rage. She remembered her mother's innocence, her father's calculation, the system that transformed bedroom accusations into family destruction. That memory would drive her to power, and from power to revenge that would shake the empire's foundations. The executioner draws his sword from its leather sheath with practiced silence. His movements carry the weight of routine, each gesture refined through countless repetitions. Today marks his 300th execution for adultery, though he stopped counting individual deaths seasons ago. The blade catches morning light as he tests its edge against a silk scarf, watching fabric part like mist. Behind the platform, his assistants arrange the tools of their trade: whetstones for maintaining edges between multiple executions, spare blades in case of chips or breaks, cloths for wiping blood that might cause slippery grips. The logistics of mass death require careful preparation. The crowd gathers early for noble executions, claiming prime viewing spots while vendors set up their stalls. Children perch on fathers' shoulders, learning that women's deaths constitute public entertainment. The executioner watches this familiar scene while oiling his blade, knowing that today's crowd expects special performance. 3 noble wives condemned for organizing supposed adultery gatherings means triple the spectacle. His apprentice approaches with the execution order, hands trembling despite months of training. The boy still flinches at certain aspects of their profession. Time will either harden him or drive him to other work. The executioner remembers his own early revulsion, now replaced by mechanical precision. The payment rates vary by class and execution method. Common women bring standard fees for hanging or arrows. Noble ladies requiring ceremonial beheading pay triple rates. Special requests cost extra. Some husbands pay premium for specific blade techniques that ensure swift death. Others request the opposite. The first condemned woman arrives in chains, silk robes marking her noble status. Lady Mandukai, of the western provinces, accused of corrupting 4 other wives into sin. The executioner notes her steady walk, the way she holds her head high despite approaching death. Experience taught him to read condemned women's final approaches. Some collapse, some rage. The dignified ones like Lady Mandukai often prove most difficult. He positions her on the platform with professional detachment, adjusting her posture for optimal blade angle. The crowd quiets as he raises his sword for the ritual blessing. The shamans chant prayers that transform judicial murder into sacred duty. He mouths the familiar words while calculating strike angles. The blade falls with practiced perfection, separating head from body in one clean motion. Blood fountains across fresh-cut planks while the crowd erupts in cheers. The executioner steps back, allowing assistants to manage the corpse while he cleans his blade. 4 more await their turns. The second woman requires different handling. She fights against guards, screaming innocence until they force her to her knees. The executioner grips her hair, holding her steady for the strike. Struggling victims demand adjusted techniques. His blade finds its mark despite her movements, though the cut lacks the first execution's elegance. Between deaths, he maintains his tools with methodical care. Blood corrodes steel if left too long. The third woman approaches in shock, barely responsive to guards' directions. These require careful positioning since they won't hold themselves upright. He arranges her like a mannequin, ensuring proper angle before the strike. The twins present unique challenges. Sisters accused together, demanding simultaneous execution. The crowd expects coordinated spectacle. He signals his assistant, synchronizing their movements through practiced gestures. 2 blades rise together. 2 blades fall. The crowd's roar shakes the platform as matched heads roll toward the platform's edge. Noble executions pay enough to support his family for months. The executioner maintains a comfortable house, sends his children to good schools, provides dowries for his daughters. The irony doesn't escape him. He ensures his own daughter's safety through other daughters' deaths. The mathematics of survival in an empire built on women's bodies. His wife never asks about his work, though she counts the gold he brings home. Their own marriage remains carefully proper, above any suspicion that might reverse their positions. She knows that executioners' wives face the same laws as anyone. The blade shows no favoritism for the hand that wields it. The mourning progresses through its schedule of death. A merchant's wife caught with supposed love letters. A minister's spouse accused by ambitious rivals. Each execution follows established patterns while maintaining individual variations. The executioner adapts his technique to body types, clothing, crowd expectations. Some condemned women attempt bribes at the last moment. Hidden jewels sewn into hems, promises of gold from family holdings, information about other adulteresses to trade for mercy. The executioner refuses all offers with professional consistency. Accepting bribes risks his own neck on this platform. The governors who pay him tolerate no freelancing. His apprentice vomits after the 7th execution, overwhelmed by the morning's volume. The executioner continues without pause. The schedule demands completion before noon heat makes precision difficult. Sweat affects grip. Fatigue influences accuracy. Professional pride demands clean kills regardless of personal comfort. The regional variations in execution style reflect local preferences and available resources. Mountain provinces favor clifftop pushing. Desert regions employ burial up to neck followed by stoning. River territories practice drowning in special cages. The executioner trained in multiple methods before specializing in ceremonial beheading. He remembers his first execution 20 years ago. A potter's wife, accused of meeting a traveler. His hands shook so badly the first strike only wounded her. The senior executioner finished the job while crowds jeered his incompetence. That failure drove him to perfect his technique. Now governors request him specifically for important deaths. The platform requires constant maintenance between execution seasons. Wood soaks too much blood, becoming slippery and unsafe. The executioner oversees replacement of planks, installation of drainage channels, construction of proper viewing angles. His workplace demands the same attention as any craftsman's shop. Noble families sometimes request specific executioners, knowing reputations for swift, clean deaths. Others demand amateurs, hoping incompetence might horrify crowds into sympathy. The politics of execution extend beyond simple death to performative elements. The executioner navigates these requests while maintaining professional standards. His sons show no interest in following his profession. They pursue merchant trades, distancing themselves from their father's bloody income. He understands their choice while regretting the loss of successor. The skills required take years to develop. Few possess the necessary combination of precision and detachment. The afternoon executions involve common women, less theatrical but more numerous. The executioner switches to simpler methods, hanging for groups, arrows for individuals. The reduced ceremony reflects class distinctions maintained even in death. Noble blood demands noble treatment, common blood pools unremarked. Payment negotiations occur through intermediaries. Direct contact between executioners and hiring authorities maintains social boundaries. The gold arrives in unmarked packages. The execution orders come through official channels. The distance preserves everyone's dignity while enabling necessary transactions. His tools reflect considerable investment. The finest steel from Persian smiths, handles wrapped in sharkskin for secure grip, whetstones imported from Japan. The executioner spends more on maintaining his implements than most families earn in a year. Quality tools ensure quality deaths, reducing suffering while maximizing efficiency. The psychological toll manifests in unexpected ways. He dreams not of executions but of empty platforms. The absence of death disturbs more than its presence. His wife finds him checking his hands at night, counting fingers as if confirming their attachment. The mind develops its own coping mechanisms. Young executioners often develop drinking problems or violent tendencies. The successful ones learn compartmentalization. The work stays at the platform. Home remains sanctuary. The executioner maintains this boundary through rigid routine. He washes 7 times after each execution, changes clothes twice, performs cleansing rituals that satisfy internal needs more than religious requirements. The busiest execution seasons correspond with political upheavals. New governors eliminate old regimes through adultery accusations. Power transitions demand blood offerings. The executioner watches governments change through the lens of his platform. Each new administration brings fresh waves of condemned women. He trains apprentices in technical skills while avoiding philosophical discussions. The work requires practitioners who don't think too deeply about implications. Those who question the justice of their strikes don't last long. The successful executioner acts without judging, strikes without hesitating, collects payment without guilt. Winter executions pose unique challenges. Frozen ground resists grave digging. Blood congeals quickly on cold steel. Crowds huddle together, less enthusiastic in their cheering. The executioner adjusts techniques for weather, using heated blades to prevent sticking, working faster to minimize exposure. The families of executed women sometimes approach him years later. They offer forgiveness he didn't request, seeking closure he can't provide. He directs them to shamans or temples. His role ends when blood stops flowing. The aftermath belongs to others. Professional boundaries protect what remains of his conscience. Special executions requiring innovative methods bring premium payments. A woman accused of witchcraft and adultery demands burning after beheading. Another supposedly spread corruption through song, requiring her tongue's removal before death. The executioner fulfills these requests with technical precision, innovating when necessary. His reputation extends beyond mere killing to theatrical presentation. The angle of spray, the roll of heads, the dramatic pause before strikes. Governors hire him for executions meant to send messages. The death itself matters less than its presentation. He choreographs mortality for political purposes. The guards who deliver condemned women develop their own professional detachment. They exchange familiar nods with the executioner, fellow workers in the death industry. Everyone plays their role in the machinery. Guards restrain, shamans bless, executioners strike. The system functions through specialized cooperation. Some executions require multiple attempts despite his expertise. Unusual anatomy, equipment failure, divine intervention, the crowd whispers. The executioner continues until completion, professional pride demanding success regardless of obstacles. A reputation built over decades can crumble with one botched beheading. He notices changes in condemned women across his career. Early years brought more genuine adulteresses caught in actual affairs. Recent years bring obvious political victims. The charges grow more elaborate while evidence grows thinner. The executioner observes without comment. His blade serves whoever pays, regardless of truth. The transfer of his skills to the next generation proves challenging. Books capture technique but not instinct. Demonstrations show mechanics but not mental preparation. The crucial elements resist direct teaching. Either apprentices develop the necessary detachment or they find other professions. Natural selection operates even among death dealers. His wife maintains their social position through careful navigation. Too proud, and people resent the executioner's family prospering from death. Too humble, and they suspect guilt or weakness. She walks the narrow path of respectability built on blood money. Their children attend school with those whose mothers he might execute tomorrow. The executioner ages into his profession, movements growing more efficient as strength declines. Experience compensates for physical changes. He anticipates victims' reactions, adjusts for wind conditions, reads crowds like texts. The mastery comes not from repetition, but from continuous adaptation. Regional executioners gather occasionally to share techniques and tools. They discuss blade angles over wine, compare platform designs, trade stories of unusual requests. The gatherings feel like any professional assembly, until someone mentions the human cost. Then silence falls, each man retreating into private justifications. His final years in the profession bring philosophical reflection despite earlier avoidance. The platform soaked with noble blood, the countless heads separated from bodies, the children dragged to slavery. The executioner tallies his career in corpses while training his last apprentice. The retirement ceremony involves burning his primary blade, the steel that served through 1,000 deaths. The smoke rises black against morning sky while shamans chant purification prayers. The executioner watches his tool transform to ash and memory. Tomorrow another will raise the blade. The platform demands its offerings regardless of who delivers them. He settles into retirement with gold enough for comfort, but dreams too dark for peace. The executioner's pension comes weighted with ghosts. Every noble wife who met his blade, every common woman who swung from his ropes. They visit nightly, not seeking vengeance but simply existing in permanent congregation. Years later, historians will count his victims, analyze his techniques, debate his motivations. They'll reduce a career of choreographed death to statistics and sociology. The executioner cares nothing for legacy. He performed a trade, collected payment, provided for family. The moral calculations belong to those who hired him. The new generation of executioners brings different sensibilities. They speak of justice and necessity, wrap their work in patriotic purpose. The old executioner recognizes rationalization when he hears it. The blade cares nothing for philosophy. Death arrives regardless of its dealer's delusions. His own death comes quietly, no platform or ceremony. The executioner who delivered 1,000 violent ends receives a peaceful one. The irony might amuse if anyone notices. His funeral draws small attendance. Fellow executioners, former apprentices, the families he enriched through others' deaths. The platform stands empty the morning after his burial, awaiting its next practitioner. Fresh planks cover old bloodstains. New blades hang in the preparation room. The machinery of execution pauses briefly for transition, then resumes its hungry function. The executioner is dead. Long live the executioner. The cycle continues with mechanical certainty. New accusations, fresh victims, different hands raising familiar blades. The empire's appetite for women's blood remains constant while those who feed it prove replaceable. Each executioner believes himself essential until another takes his place. The platform outlives them all, soaking up generations of blood, while executioners age and die. Stone and wood prove more permanent than the flesh that serves them. The structure stands as monument to systematized murder, each stain a story, each groove worn by kneeling women who never rose. The most horrific execution was saved for a woman who never actually cheated. The morning summons arrives on silk paper, each character written in the Emperor's own hand. Lady Kara reads the message 3 times before understanding crashes through her disbelief. Adultery charges filed by her husband. Trial set for noon. The specific lover named in the accusation died 5 years ago in battle, his bones scattered across distant steppes. She knows immediately why today brings her destruction. Yesterday's court session saw her testify about financial irregularities in her husband's military accounts. The truth she spoke under oath now demands payment in blood. Her servants flutter around her like moths sensing flame, understanding their mistress faces the platform while they face slave markets. The guards arrive with practiced efficiency, their movements choreographed through countless similar arrests. Lady Kara maintains composure while they bind her wrists, though her mind races through calculations of survival. No goats could purchase mercy from accusations serving imperial needs. The financial corruption she exposed reaches too high, involves too many powerful men who need her voice permanently silenced. Inside the palace dungeons she finds herself among familiar faces. The merchant's widow who reported tax evasion, the general's wife who questioned military supply contracts. Each woman wears silk robes and iron chains, their common crime being knowledge spoken aloud. The adultery charges simply provide legal framework for political murder. The torturer approaches with his tools arranged on velvet cloth, their metal surfaces gleaming with terrible promise. Lady Kara studies his face, recognizing the nephew of a minister she'd named in yesterday's testimony. Personal vendetta will sharpen professional cruelty. He selects bronze pincers with an artist's consideration, while explaining how her confession will emerge. She endures the first session without breaking, though her screams echo through stone corridors. The confession they demand includes not just imaginary adultery but retraction of yesterday's testimony. She must admit to lying about the financial crimes while confessing to sexual ones. The irony burns worse than heated metal against flesh. Other cells fill with women whose testimonies threatened powerful interests. A scribe's wife who documented illegal land seizures. A translator who revealed treaty violations. Their adultery charges arrive with synchronized precision, transforming witnesses into criminals through bedroom accusations. The Empire's solution for inconvenient truth-tellers operates with industrial efficiency. The torturer returns for a second session when Lady Kara's silence proves stubborn. He brings new implements and crueler creativity. Her resistance crumbles as joints separate and consciousness fragments. The confession emerges in pieces, each word purchased through calculated agony. She names the dead lover, describes impossible meetings, admits to crimes of passion that never occurred. Between sessions, she watches through cell bars as other women receive similar treatment. The pattern reveals itself through repetition. Every woman who spoke truth in court now confesses lies in chains. The adultery laws serve as universal solvent for dissolving testimony that threatens the powerful. Their bodies become parchment where false confessions overwrite true accusations. The formal trial proceeds with mechanical precision. Judges who yesterday praised her honesty now condemn her morality. The financial documents she'd presented vanish from court records. Her testimony disappears from official transcripts. History rewrites itself through torture chambers and execution orders. Lady Kara kneels before men she exposed as thieves, while they sentence her as an adulteress. Her husband stands among the accusers, his relief palpable as she confesses to betraying their marriage bed. The fortune he stole remains secure now that its primary witness heads for the platform. He calculates inheritance gains while she speaks words carved from her through professional agony. The mathematics of murder balance perfectly in his favor. The crowd gathering for her execution includes many who benefited from the corruption she exposed. They wear their finest clothes to watch her die, celebrating the silencing of truth through choreographed justice. Street vendors sell meat skewers and fermented milk, while children practice counting on their fingers, timing their lessons to the executioner's blade. Lady Kara ascends the platform with difficulty, her body bearing witness to the confession's violent birth. The executioner positions her with practiced hands, while the crowd settles into expectant silence. She lifts her head for final words, speaking clearly despite everything they did to break her voice. I die for speaking financial truth, not committing physical sin. Let the ledgers I exposed remain as my true testimony. The blade falls before she can name specific names, but her message carries across the assembly. The crowd shifts uneasily, recognizing the pattern they've witnessed before. Another woman whose honesty proved inconvenient. Another adultery charge solving political problems. The machinery grinds onward, but its gears show signs of strain. Her children stand in chains near the slave wagons, old enough to understand their mother died for mathematics rather than morality. They memorize faces in the crowd, noting who cheers their orphaning. The education they receive today differs from yesterday's lessons in noble comportment. They learn how power protects itself through legal murder. The aftermath follows familiar patterns. Lady Kara's testimony vanishes from all records. The financial crimes she documented continue unimpeded. Her husband remarries within days to a woman who knows nothing of account books. The corruption spreads deeper while its chief witness feeds cemetery crows. Other women in the dungeons watch Lady Kara's execution through barred windows. They understand their own fates now, seeing how testimony transforms into adultery through torture's alchemy. Some break immediately, confessing to save their children partial inheritance. Others resist longer, clinging to truth until pain erases everything except compliance. The minister whose nephew served as torturer reviews the operation's success with satisfaction. Financial whistleblowers eliminated, testimony retracted through confession, records cleansed of inconvenient truth. The adultery laws prove more effective than assassination for silencing opposition. Dead witnesses create martyrs, but executed adulteresses only generate shame. Word spreads through noble women's networks about the danger of honesty. Those who witness corruption learn to cultivate blindness. Account books develop mysterious gaps. Court testimony becomes exercises in selective amnesia. The threat of adultery accusations trains women in protective ignorance. Lady Kara's grave receives no markers or mourners. Executed adulteresses forfeit burial rights along with everything else. Her body joins others in mass pits outside city walls. The empire's truth-tellers transformed into anonymous bones. The financial corruption she died exposing metastasizes through government departments. A young scribe who worked with Lady Kara burns her duplicate records rather than risk similar fate. The evidence she gathered with such care transforms to ash, while the crimes it documented flourish. Truth becomes too dangerous when its speakers face platform justice. The empire trains its citizens in strategic silence through spectacular executions. New women arrive in the dungeons daily, their crimes ranging from witnessing murders to questioning tax assessments. The adultery charges adapt to each situation with creative flexibility. One woman supposedly seduced a priest who took celibacy vows before her birth. Another committed adultery with a merchant whose caravan records prove he never visited her province. The torture chambers expand to accommodate increased demand for confessions. Professional staff work in shifts, extracting admissions tailored to political needs. The infrastructure of interrogation rivals any government department in efficiency. Truth dies in these rooms, replaced by whatever narrative power requires. Judges develop reputations for creativity in accepting obviously fabricated evidence. One convicts women based on dream interpretation. Another finds adultery in astrological charts. The legal system transforms into theatre, where guilt exists independent of evidence. The performance is convinced through violence rather than logic. Lady Kara's daughter faces her own accusation within the year. Too young for marriage, she's charged with corrupting other children through inherited sin. The creativity of charges expands when traditional adultery becomes implausible. The platform adapts to consume even those technically incapable of the crimes they're dying for. The cycle accelerates as more women recognize the pattern. Speaking truth in court brings bedroom accusations. Reporting crimes guarantees criminal charges. The safest path requires deliberate ignorance, careful blindness, strategic stupidity. The empire trains its women in protective incompetence through mass execution. Foreign diplomats note the pattern in their dispatches home. The Mongol Empire solves political problems through sexual accusations. Their own female nationals face similar risks when they possess inconvenient knowledge. Embassy compounds become sanctuaries for women whose honesty marks them for elimination. Some husbands discover too late that their wives' executions bring unexpected consequences. Lord Timur eliminated his wife for exposing his smuggling operation, only to find her family possessed duplicate records. Her death confirmed rather than concealed his guilt. The adultery charge saved him temporarily while ensuring his eventual downfall. The platform builders developed specialized construction techniques, drainage channels for blood, acoustic design for optimal crowd hearing, reinforced structures for multiple simultaneous executions. The architecture of death evolves through practice into monuments of murderous efficiency. Lady Kara's name disappears from official records, but her story spreads through whispered warnings. Women learn her fate, understand its lessons, adapt their behavior accordingly. Truth becomes luxury too expensive for those who value their lives. The empire's corruption grows in darkness where honesty fears to shine light. New financial crimes flourish in the silence her death created. Military supplies disappear into private warehouses. Tax revenues vanish between collection and treasury. The rot she tried exposing spreads unchecked while those who might document it remember her fate. Each stolen coin carries the blood price of witnesses too frightened to speak. The greatest false accusation would topple an entire dynasty, but not through exposure of lies. Instead, it would come through the rage of a survivor who remembered every false charge, every murdered mother, every truth silenced by the blade. She would rise from slavery's ashes with memory as her weapon and vengeance as her cause. Modern voices filter through a Ulaanbaatar cafe where three women discuss marriage contracts over coffee. The conversation drifts toward family histories, genealogies traced through maternal lines that suddenly terminate in silence. One woman mentions her great-great-grandmother's name appears in records until 1843, then vanishes without death notation or explanation. The historical amnesia runs deep through Mongolian families. Women's names disappear from lineages not through natural death but through judicial erasure. The cafe conversation reveals patterns repeated across generations. Female ancestors who simply cease existing in family trees, their fates unspoken but understood. These modern descendants carry the weight of the Yassa's legacy without fully comprehending its scope. They know certain great-grandmothers died young, without learning how or why. Family archives contain gaps where women's lives should exist, absences that speak louder than any written record. The waiter brings fresh tea while one woman scrolls through digitized genealogical records on her phone. She finds male ancestors documented across centuries but female lines that cut off abruptly. The digital preservation of historical documents makes these patterns visible in ways previous generations couldn't perceive. Statistical analysis of Mongolian genealogies reveals the shadow cast by centuries of adultery executions. Female life expectancy in noble families drops precipitously during certain periods, far below natural mortality rates. The numbers tell stories that individual families learn to suppress through generational silence. Academic researchers studying the Yassa's influence on modern Mongolian law find echoes in contemporary statutes. While execution for adultery ended centuries ago, the legal structures that enabled gendered violence evolved rather than disappeared. Modern divorce laws still favor husbands in property distribution. Inheritance patterns still privilege male lineages. The conversation shifts to contemporary marriage anxieties among educated Mongolian women. They discuss prenuptial agreements, property protections, the careful negotiations required to enter legal unions safely. Their precautions echo survival strategies their ancestors developed under threat of execution. One woman mentions her grandmother's advice about marriage: have assigned documents without reading, always maintain independent finances, document everything. The elderly woman never explained why such vigilance mattered, but her granddaughter recognizes trauma's inheritance in these careful warnings. The lasting psychological impact manifests in subtle ways. Mongolian women report higher rates of anxiety around marriage ceremonies than global averages. Therapists note recurring themes of betrayal fears, hypervigilance about spousal loyalty, nightmares featuring historical imagery patients can't consciously explain. Cultural memory preserves what official history erases. Folk songs contain coded warnings about trusting husbands too completely. Traditional stories feature wives who survive through cleverness rather than fidelity. The oral traditions carry survival wisdom wrapped in entertainment. The Yassa code's influence extended far beyond the Mongol Empire's borders. Legal systems from Russia to China absorbed elements of these gendered punishment structures. The virus of legalized femicide spread through conquest and cultural exchange, adapting to local contexts while maintaining core inequalities. Modern human rights organizations track how contemporary honor killings echo the Yassa's logic. The transformation from state-sanctioned execution to family-justified murder represents evolution rather than progress. The same accusations, the same gendered application, the same use of sexual morality to eliminate inconvenient women. The cafe women discuss a recent news story about a rural woman killed by her husband's family for suspected infidelity. The legal system that once mandated such murders now nominally prohibits them, yet enforcement remains selective. The ghost of the Yassa haunts contemporary violence through cultural permission, if not legal mandate. International courts, studying customary law's influence on modern legal systems, identify the Mongol Empire's adultery codes as particularly persistent. The DNA of these ancient laws appears in statutes across Asia, embedded so deeply that their origins become invisible. Modern women navigate legal systems still shaped by 800-year-old execution mandates. The economic impact of historical femicide continues through inherited poverty. Families whose maternal wealth was confiscated through adultery executions never recovered those losses. The compound effect across generations creates economic disparities that persist into the 21st century. One cafe woman mentions her work with rural education programs. She describes meeting elderly women who refuse to let their granddaughters learn to read, fearing literacy brings dangerous knowledge. The trauma of ancestors executed for knowing too much passes through generations as protective ignorance. Museums beginning to document this history face resistance from multiple directions. Government officials prefer celebrating Mongol military glory over acknowledging systematic femicide. Families resist exposing ancestors' fates. The silence that protected survivors continues protecting their descendants from confronting historical horror. Digital humanities projects attempt to reconstruct erased women's lives through negative space analysis, where records show property transfers without deaths, where children enter slavery without explanation, where husbands remarry with suspicious timing. These gaps reveal murdered women's shadows. The conversation turns to contemporary marriage statistics, showing Mongolian women marrying later and less frequently than previous generations. Sociologists attribute this to education and economics, but deeper analysis suggests inherited wariness of legal bonds that historically enabled murder. Archaeological evidence supports what written records obscure. Mass burial sites contain disproportionate numbers of young female skeletons showing blade trauma. The bones tell stories that documents burned or suppressed. Modern technology reveals ancient atrocities through calcium and carbon. The youngest woman in the cafe shares her grandmother's diary, recently discovered in family storage. The entries stop abruptly when her grandmother married, resuming decades later with cryptic references to surviving the years of silence. Between those entries lies a gulf of unspoken experience. Legal reform advocates working to strengthen women's protections in Mongolia face cultural resistance rooted in historical precedent. Opponents cite tradition without acknowledging that tradition includes centuries of legalized murder. The Yassa's shadow complicates every attempt at gender equality legislation. The psychological profession in Mongolia reports unique therapeutic challenges. Patients describe ancestral nightmares, inherited fears with no personal origin, anxiety patterns that suggest intergenerational trauma. The clinical language wraps ancient wounds in modern terminology. Contemporary Mongolian literature increasingly explores these historical silences. Novelists imagine the untold stories of executed women, Poets give voice to the accused. Artists create installations from absence, making visible the erased feminine presence in historical narratives. The cafe women pay their bill while concluding that understanding their history requires acknowledging its horrors. They represent a generation finally able to examine what previous ones survived through silence. Their conversation ends with plans to research their own family gaps. International comparative law studies identify the Mongol Empire's adultery statutes as uniquely influential in codifying gendered violence. Unlike contemporary systems that permitted but didn't require such punishments, the Yassa mandated death, creating precedent for obligatory rather than optional femicide. The modern wedding industry in Mongolia unconsciously reflects historical trauma. Ceremonies emphasize public witness of consent. Documents get signed in multiple copies. Photography documents every moment. These elaborate precautions echo ancestors' need to prove marriages were valid when accusations could arise decades later. Gender studies programs at Mongolian universities face controversy when examining this history. Conservative voices argue that analyzing historical femicide dishonors Mongol heritage. Progressive scholars respond that heritage includes both glory and horror, conquest and cruelty. The influence spread through trade routes as much as conquest. Merchants carrying Mongol law codes introduced concepts of mandatory death for female adultery to cultures that previously allowed financial penalties. The viral spread of lethal misogyny followed gold and silk across continents. Contemporary DNA analysis reveals population bottlenecks in maternal lineages during the Empire period. The genetic evidence confirms what historians suspected: the executions eliminated entire female bloodlines. Modern Mongolians carry the genetic scars of ancestral femicide. Rural communities maintain naming taboos around women who disappeared from family histories. Speaking certain names brings bad luck, locals claim, though none remember why. The superstition preserves silence that once protected families from association with executed women. The cafe empties as the women continue their discussion on the street. They pass the National Museum, where exhibits celebrate Mongol military innovation while ignoring judicial murder. The selective historical memory shapes national identity through careful omission. Urban planning in historical Mongol capitals unconsciously preserved execution grounds as empty spaces. Modern parks and plazas occupy land too blood-soaked for building. Citizens relax where their ancestors died, the ground remembering what people choose to forget. The final woman shares her decision to remain unmarried, influenced by family stories of women who chose badly and disappeared. She recognizes the irrationality of fearing 800-year-old laws but can't shake the inherited wariness. Trauma transcends logic through generational transmission. Contemporary marriage counselors in Mongolia report unique challenges. Couples arrive with conflicts rooted in historical gender dynamics neither fully understands. The counselors address surface issues while deeper currents pull from centuries past. The last genealogical database entry appears on the phone screen. DI, another woman whose recorded existence ends without explanation in the 1700s. The modern descendant touches the screen where her ancestor's name appears, bridging centuries through digital connection to analog loss. Legal anthropologists studying the Yassa's influence on modern justice systems find its most persistent legacy in burden of proof standards. The presumption of female guilt in sexual matters, established through Mongol law, adapted into contemporary legal systems worldwide. Modern women navigate courts still tilted by ancient prejudice. The conversation fragments as the women part ways, each carrying new awareness of their historical inheritance. They promise to share further discoveries, building collective knowledge from family silences. Their informal research network mirrors their ancestors' survival strategies. Evening falls on Ulaanbaatar as lights illuminate the same streets where execution platforms once stood. Modern Mongolia builds its future on ground fertilized by ancestral blood. The city thrives unconscious of the bones beneath its foundations. The youngest woman posts her genealogical findings on social media, sparking discussions among her followers about similar family gaps. The digital age enables collective recognition of patterns hidden when families faced isolation. Technology breaks the silence that once protected through separation. Comments accumulate under her post as other young Mongolians share abbreviated family trees, maternal lines that vanish without explanation, stories of great-grandmothers who went away. The crowdsourced trauma mapping reveals the Yassa's true demographic impact. Academic conferences now include panels on historical femicide's influence on contemporary societies. Scholars trace direct lines from Mongol execution codes to modern honor-killing statutes. The academic language sanitizes horror while establishing causal connections. The final comment on the social media thread comes from an elderly woman who breaks decades of silence. She shares her grandmother's last letter, hidden for generations, describing her mother's execution for refusing false confession. The document provides rare first-hand testimony of the terror's intimate impact. Modern Mongolia grapples with celebrating its historical power while acknowledging its gendered violence. The national narrative struggles to incorporate both conquest and cruelty. Tourist sites memorialize battles, while execution grounds remain unmarked. The Yassa's influence on global legal systems remains largely unexamined in mainstream historical education. Law students learn precedent without learning origins. The roots of gendered legal violence stay buried beneath technical language and procedural focus. Contemporary feminist movements in Mongolia draw inspiration from ancestral resistance. They honor women who died speaking truth, who refused false confessions, who preserved their daughters through strategic silence. The movement builds on foundations of historical survival. International tribunals prosecuting gender-based violence increasingly recognize historical precedent's role in contemporary crimes. The Yassa provides documented evidence of state-sanctioned femicide, establishing patterns that persist in modern conflicts. Ancient law becomes evidence in contemporary courts. The digital conversation expands as diaspora Mongolians contribute their family mysteries. Geographic distance enables emotional proximity to historical trauma. Descendants scattered worldwide unite through shared recognition of ancestral loss. Night settles over Ulaanbaatar, while apartments glow with computer screens researching family histories. The quiet work of reclamation happens in living rooms and libraries, piecing together lives from absence, reconstructing women from the shadows they cast. The final social media comment references a grandmother who survived by entering religious life rather than remarriage after her husband's death. She lived 80 years in a monastery rather than risk another marriage that might end on the platform. Survival strategies varied, but all required sacrificing normal life for continued breath. Tomorrow brings new searches through archives, more conversations over coffee, additional pieces of the historical puzzle emerging from silence. The work of remembering continues against the inertia of forgetting. Each recovered name represents victory over erasure. The lasting legacy lives not in law books but in the careful way Mongolian women still approach marriage, the documents they protect, the exit strategies they plan. 8 centuries after the Yassa's creation, its shadow shapes behavior through inherited caution. Modern technology enables what ancestral silence prevented: DDC, collective recognition of systematic violence. Databases reveal patterns. Social media breaks isolation. Digital humanities reconstructs erased lives. The tools of remembering grow more powerful than the forces of forgetting, which brings us back to that noble woman on the execution ground. The blade catches the morning sun as the executioner raises it high above the kneeling woman. Her silk robes, once the mark of Mongol nobility, pool around her in the dust of the execution ground. The crowd presses forward, hundreds of eyes fixed on the trembling figure whose crime has brought her to this moment. From the slave wagons behind the platform, children's voices pierce the air, calling for their mother, not understanding why iron chains now bind their small wrists. The woman's husband steps forward, his face carved from stone, addressing the assembled nobles with the cold precision of a man who has already counted his new wealth. Let all witness the price of betrayal. His voice carries across the silent crowd. My wife, mother of my children, has broken the sacred law. She has defiled our marriage bed with another man. The accusation hangs in the air like the blade itself, heavy with finality. The woman lifts her head, lips moving in what might be denial or prayer, but her words dissolve into the morning wind. The executioner adjusts his grip, muscles tensing for the strike that will end not just one life, but destroy an entire bloodline. The blade falls with a whisper of steel through air. The crowd erupts in savage approval, some turning away from the spray of blood that marks the ground. Her children shriek as guards drag them deeper into the wagons, their small hands reaching through iron bars toward a mother who will never answer. The husband's satisfaction runs deeper than wounded honor as he surveys the crowd, noting which rivals avert their gazes, which allies nod approval. Days before this moment, sealed documents had passed between ministers in darkened corridors. The woman's brother commanded cavalry units loyal to the old guard, forces that threatened the new regent's consolidation of power. Her execution eliminates not just a wife, but an entire military faction through the dishonor of association. The adultery charge served its purpose perfectly, transforming political assassination into moral justice. The supposed lover, named in her confession, had indeed existed, a court musician of exceptional talent who'd performed at state banquets. He'd died 5 years previous, when his riverboat mysteriously capsized during a diplomatic mission. Convenient how the dead cannot refute accusations extracted through bronze pincers and heated chains. The confession described passionate meetings in garden pavilions during nights, when witnesses placed her at religious ceremonies miles distant. Her actual crime traced back 3 months to a private audience with visiting Chinese ambassadors. She'd served as translator, her education in multiple scripts making her valuable for sensitive negotiations. The knowledge she'd gained during those sessions about planned territorial concessions threatened too many powerful interests. A translator who knew which lands would be sacrificed for trade agreements possessed information worth killing to suppress. The torture had lasted 4 days in the palace dungeons, each session escalating in creativity and cruelty. Professional confessors worked in shifts, ensuring continuous pressure without the release of death or unconsciousness. They sought not just admission of adultery but specific details that would implicate her brother's military network. Each name extracted through agony became another arrest warrant, another family marked for destruction. Between sessions, they'd brought her children to the cell bars, forcing her to watch as guards demonstrated what would happen to them if she maintained innocence. The youngest, barely 3 years old, reached through the bars calling "Mama," while guards discussed slave market prices for noble children. Maternal instinct proved more effective than hot irons for breaking her resistance. The platform where she'd died stood on the same ground where she'd once distributed grain during famine relief. The bitter poetry of location wasn't lost on older crowd members who remembered her kindness during desperate times. Some wept quietly while maintaining poses of righteous anger. Survival required performance of approval for executions. Everyone knew served political rather than moral purposes. Her brother received word of the execution while commanding border patrols 200 miles distant. The messenger who delivered the news also carried orders for his immediate arrest on charges of conspiracy with his adulterous sister. By sunset, his loyal cavalry units would face the choice between defending their disgraced commander or preserving their own families from guilt by association. The woman's death created ripples of destruction exactly as intended. In the capital's administrative quarters, scribes already worked to erase her contributions from official records. The trade agreements she'd helped negotiate became solely her husband's achievement. The famine relief she'd organized transformed into imperial beneficence with no individual attribution. Her erasure from history proceeded as efficiently as her physical elimination. The children in the slave wagons would be separated before nightfall, sold to different provinces to prevent any future coalition around shared grievance. The boys faced military conscription at brutal young ages, their noble training making them valuable for suicide missions. The girls would serve in households where their mother's supposed crime justified any treatment their owners chose to inflict. Her husband's new marriage negotiations commenced before her blood dried on the platform. The selected bride brought military connections that replaced those lost through his first wife's family. She was younger, less educated, with no brothers in positions of power. The replacement came pre-selected for political harmlessness and reproductive potential rather than the diplomatic skills that made his first wife simultaneously valuable and dangerous. Documents discovered decades later in imperial archives would reveal the full scope of the conspiracy against her. Letters between ministers discussing how her translation work threatened planned betrayals of border territories. military dispatches calculating how her brother's removal would enable restructuring of cavalry commands, financial records showing payments to witnesses who swore to seeing her with the long-dead musician. The platform that claimed her stands empty now, fresh planks already replacing those too soaked with noble blood to properly clean. Tomorrow brings new accusations, new families destroyed, new political problems solved through bedroom charges. The machinery operates with industrial efficiency, processing human obstacles into compliance or corpses. Modern forensic analysis of execution site remains reveals the demographic precision of political murders disguised as moral enforcement. Skeletal evidence shows victims clustered in specific age ranges, family configurations, and social positions that correlate with political upheaval rather than random adultery. The bones tell stories that contemporary records deliberately obscured. Archaeological excavations at slave market sites connected to execution grounds uncover children's toys mixed with iron shackles, tiny shoes, personal items that speak to interrupted childhoods. The material culture of judicial orphaning provides evidence that written records tried to eliminate. Each small artifact represents a family destroyed for political convenience. Contemporary Mongolian families researching genealogies find maternal lines that terminate abruptly, their own existence proof that some children survived the slave markets to eventually win freedom and reproduce. These descendants carry DNA that survived one of history's most systematic programs of politically motivated femicide. Their mere existence refutes the totality of erasure their ancestors' executioners sought. The morning after her execution, her eldest daughter sold at dawn to a merchant caravan heading toward Persian territories. The child carried hidden in her clothing a single jade hairpin, her mother's favorite, somehow overlooked during the property confiscation. That hairpin would pass through 5 generations of women, each learning the story of the noblewoman who died for knowing too much and speaking truth when silence was the only survival. Digital reconstruction of the execution ground using ground-penetrating radar reveals layers upon layers of human remains, predominantly female, dating across centuries of political purges disguised as moral enforcement. Each stratum represents another wave of women eliminated for threatening power structures through knowledge, bloodline, or simple inconvenience to ambitious men. Genetic analysis confirms what folk songs preserved in coded warnings. The executed woman's bloodline survived through her children sold into slavery, their descendants now numbered in thousands across former Mongol territories. The attempted erasure failed in its ultimate goal, even as it succeeded in its immediate political purpose. Life persisted despite law's best efforts to extinguish it. Her name appears in exactly one surviving document, a tax record that predates her execution by 10 years, listing her among contributors to temple construction. That single reference escaped erasure through bureaucratic oversight, preserving proof of her existence despite comprehensive efforts to delete her from history. The accident of survival mocks the thoroughness of her killers. Oral histories collected from elderly Mongolians include fragment memories of grandmothers who whispered about the translator who died for speaking numbers. The stories survived through generational telephone, details shifting but core preserved. A woman who knew financial secrets, a platform that drank noble blood, children who disappeared into slavery, truth that demanded death as payment. Contemporary human rights tribunals, studying historical precedents for political violence, disguised as domestic crime, find the Mongol Empire's adultery executions provide the most systematic example. The infrastructure of accusation, torture, confession, execution, and familial destruction created blueprints that authoritarian regimes would adapt for centuries. The methodology proved too effective to abandon. The platform where she died now lies beneath a modern parking structure in Karakoram, cars resting above ground sanctified by judicial murder. Construction workers reported finding unusual quantities of human remains during foundation excavation, but economic pressures overruled archaeological preservation. Progress paved over evidence, while the pattern of political elimination through sexual accusation continues evolving. Statistical modeling of execution patterns during her lifetime reveals she died during a peak period of political purging, when adultery accusations spiked precisely during power transitions. The mathematical correlation between political instability and female executions remains consistent across the empire's history. Numbers tell stories that narrative records tried to obscure. Her youngest son, sold to Western merchants at age 3, would grow to become a translator himself, though he never learned his mother's fate or his own origins. The irony of following her profession, while ignorant of their connection, speaks to history's dark poetics. He died peacefully in his 70s, successful in trade, never knowing his mother fed execution ground crows for similar linguistic skills. The final revelation emerges from comparative analysis of confession documents. Her extracted testimony matches templates used across dozens of political executions. Names and dates changed, but structure identical. The torturer's craft included pre-written narratives requiring only personalization through agony. She died for a story written before her arrest, her individual truth irrelevant to the confession's political utility. Forensic linguistics applied to surviving execution records reveals patterns in forced confessions that indicate systematic scripting. The same phrases appear across decades of documents, the same progression from denial through breaking to elaborate admission. The language of extracted lies followed formulas as rigid as the law demanding them. Which brings us to the moral catastrophe's final accounting. The platform claimed not just lives but truth itself, replacing history with propaganda, justice with convenience, law with terror. She died that morning not for any crime of passion, but for the sin of knowledge, the transgression of truth-telling in an empire built on carefully maintained lies. The children sold into slavery that morning represented more than orphaned individuals. They embodied the future consequences of systematic injustice, carrying forward trauma that would shape generations. Their mother's execution planted seeds of inevitable reckoning, though the harvest would wait centuries for collection. Her death succeeded in its immediate goals. Her brother's military network collapsed. The territorial concessions proceeded without opposition. Her husband remarried advantageously. The political machinery ground forward over her bones and blood. Victory belonged to power that morning, while justice fled into slave wagons with her weeping children. Yet something else departed the execution ground with those orphans. Memory, rage, the patient fury of the wronged. They would grow in slavery, nursing grievances their mother's killers thought safely buried with her severed head. The platform's shadow would lengthen through time until it covered thrones and brought down dynasties. She'd known her fate the moment guards arrived with chains. The knowledge she'd gained through translation work marked her more surely than any false adultery. Her final words, spoken too softly for the crowd but heard by her children, contained no plea for mercy but promise of remembrance. Remember the truth, she'd whispered before steel silenced her forever. History would eventually remember, though not as her killers intended. She stands now not as cautionary tale against female adultery, but as symbol of power's willingness to murder truth through whatever legal mechanisms prove convenient. Her death indicts not her morality, but the empire that killed her for knowing too much and speaking when silence was the only permitted response. The execution ground fell silent as workers cleared her body and prepared for the day's next victim. Blood soaked into earth that had drunk deeply of such offerings. The crowd dispersed to markets and homes, carrying with them the reminder of law's terrible certainty. Tomorrow would bring new accusations, new mothers torn from children, new political problems solved through bedroom charges. Her jade hairpin, clutched in her daughter's small hand as the slave wagon rolled toward distant markets, carried more than memory. It held promise that somewhere, somewhen, the truth would emerge from the shadows where power sought to bury it. The dynasty that killed her would fall. The law that condemned her would crumble. The children who witnessed her murder would ensure her story survived. The platform stands empty now in morning light, awaiting the next performance in power's eternal theatre. Fresh sawdust covers old bloodstains. New crowds gather for entertainment disguised as justice. The machinery continues its function, grinding lives into compliance or corpses with mechanical precision. But in the slave quarters of 1,000 scattered households, in the whispered stories of 10,000 descendants, in the careful genealogies that preserve what power tried to erase, her truth persists. She died for translating words that threatened kingdoms. Her children lived to translate her memory into permanent indictment of the system that orphaned them. The Mongol Empire would conquer nations and reshape continents, but it could not conquer the persistence of memory or the patience of the wronged. Every mother who died on that platform, every child who entered slavery, every family destroyed for political convenience added weight to history's eventual judgment. The blade that took her head that morning cut more than flesh. It severed the empire's claim to moral authority, revealed law as mere tool of power, exposed justice as performance for the powerful. Her blood on those planks wrote an indictment that would outlast the dynasty that spilled it. In the end, the platform consumed itself. The violence it dispensed returned, amplified through generations of grievance. The children orphaned by its judgments grew into adults who remembered. The families it destroyed became seeds of future destruction. The empire that built its power on women's bodies found that foundation too narrow to support permanent dominion. She died that morning believing her children would survive, hoping her sacrifice might spare them worse fates. She couldn't know that one daughter would preserve her hairpin through 5 generations, that one son would become a translator like herself, that her death would echo through centuries as symbol of power corrupting law into murder. The sun climbed higher over the execution ground, warming wood still damp with noble blood. By noon, 3 more women would kneel where she had fallen. By sunset, a dozen more children would enter slavery. The total would be lost to precise counting, but every death added to history's accumulating debt. Her husband counted gold in his chambers, calculating profits from her eliminated dowry, her confiscated properties, her erased existence. The ledgers balanced perfectly in his favor that day. He would die peacefully in his bed 20 years hence, never facing earthly justice for engineering her judicial murder. But earthly justice proved less final than cosmic reckoning. The dynasty that sanctioned her death would fall to descendants of women it murdered. The law that condemned her would vanish into historical curiosity. The platform that drank her blood would rot into archaeological fragments, studied by scholars seeking to understand systematic femicide. The children in those slave wagons carried away more than their individual grief. They transported the seeds of an empire's destruction, planted by its own cruelty, watered by their mother's blood, destined to bloom into revenge across centuries. History's arc bent slowly but inevitably toward forms of justice the platform's builders never imagined. She rests now in an unmarked grave outside the old city walls, her bones mixed with thousands of other women who died for similar political conveniences. No monument marks their sacrifice. No inscriptions preserve their names. But their collective silence speaks louder than any carved stone, an accusation that echoes through eternity. The jade hairpin rests now in a museum case, its provenance traced through careful scholarship to that morning's execution. Visitors read the placard explaining its journey through 5 generations of women, each preserving both object and story despite slavery, persecution, and poverty. The hairpin survived what empire sought to destroy, memory proving more durable than law. School children on field trips pause before the display, learning how political murder disguised itself as moral judgment, how women died for knowledge rather than desire, how orphans preserved truth through patient generations. The lessons discomfort with their contemporary relevance, their reminder that power still seeks to silence through whatever mechanisms prove convenient. The execution ground lies buried beneath tons of concrete and centuries of forgetting, but ground remembers what humans choose to ignore. Every mother who knelt there left an impression deeper than physical remains. Their collective presence haunts the geography, a psychic scar that sensitive visitors report feeling without understanding its origin. Modern Mongolia builds its future on foundations that include this buried history of gendered violence. The nation that celebrates its historical conquests must also reckon with its systematic femicide. The pride and shame intertwine too tightly for simple separation. Heritage includes both glory and horror. Her story joins thousands of others in demanding remembrance, refusing the erasure her executioners planned. Each recovered name, each traced genealogy, each preserved artifact testifies against the platform's purpose. The murdered mothers achieve through patient history what they couldn't accomplish in life, the exposure of injustice disguised as law. The mourning that claimed her life reverberates still through descendants who carry her DNA if not her name. They live as proof that extermination failed, that life persists despite law's cruelest efforts. Their existence refutes the platform's purpose more eloquently than any argument. Survival itself becomes a form of justice. In the end, she won. Not the battle that morning when steel met flesh and law claimed victory, but the war across centuries as truth emerged from shadows, as descendants multiplied beyond counting, as her story transformed from cautionary tale to indictment. The platform that drank her blood stands empty, while her legacy spreads through generations. The sun sets now on the parking lot that covers old execution grounds. Cars rest where crowds once cheered judicial murder. Commerce flows where blood once pooled. Progress paves over history, but cannot erase its lessons. The platform exists now only in memory, but memory proves more permanent than wood and iron. Her final whispered words to her children, "Remember the truth," echo through centuries to find their audience. The truth she died to protect emerges now through scholarship and DNA analysis, through preserved artifacts and traced genealogies. Patient history accomplishes what immediate justice could not: the vindication of the condemned. She was guilty of nothing except knowing too much and speaking truth when lies would have saved her. She died for the crime of competence in an empire that preferred women ignorant. Her execution served its immediate political purpose while planting seeds of its own eventual judgment. The platform claimed her body, but not her story. The children torn from her that morning would grow into adults who remembered every detail, who passed those memories through generations like sacred texts. They preserved in whispers what empire tried to erase through violence. Their descendants now number in millions, each carrying fragment memories of that morning's injustice. Time delivered the verdict that morning's crowd could not. She stands vindicated by history while her accusers fade into footnotes. The platform that claimed her body crumbles into archaeological fragments. The law that condemned her exists now only as a historical curiosity studied by scholars of systematic oppression. Her jade hairpin gleams in its museum case. 5 generations of careful preservation defeating empire's attempt at erasure. Visitors touch the glass with reverent fingers, connecting across centuries to women who died for truth, who preserved memory despite slavery's degradation, who ensured stories survived when tellers could not. The final accounting arrives not through earthly courts but through history's patient accumulation. Every woman who died on that platform, every child sold into slavery, every family destroyed for political convenience adds to the total. The debt compounds across centuries, awaiting collection by descendants who remember what power wanted forgotten. She died believing her sacrifice might protect her children, hoping truth would eventually emerge from shadows. Both beliefs proved correct, though neither in ways she could have imagined. Her children survived slavery to spawn dynasties of their own. Her truth emerged through patient scholarship and preserved artifacts. The Mongol Empire conquered territories from sunrise to sunset, but it could not conquer the human capacity for memory and patient justice. Every execution created witnesses. Every injustice planted seeds of future reckoning. Every mother's blood on those planks wrote history's eventual verdict. In the end, the executioner's blade cut both ways. It severed heads while creating martyrs. It silenced voices while amplifying their messages through outrage. It served power while undermining authority. The platform meant to preserve order became the symbol of its corruption. She kneels forever in that morning sunlight, silk robes pooling around her, children calling from slave wagons, blade descending toward her neck. But she also lives forever in every descendant who carries her DNA, every scholar who recovers her story, every visitor who pauses before her jade hairpin to consider the cost of truth. The platform is gone, but its shadow remains, a darkness across centuries that no amount of progress can fully illuminate. The women who died there demand not vengeance but remembrance, not retribution but recognition. Their blood wrote history that no revision can erase, no propaganda can obscure. She died for translating forbidden knowledge, for speaking financial truths that threatened powerful men. Her execution succeeded in its immediate goals, while failing in its ultimate purpose. The silence her death purchased proved temporary. The truth she preserved through her children's memory proves permanent. Morning sunlight warms the museum case holding her jade hairpin, the same sun that witnessed her execution now witnessing her vindication. History's arc bends slowly but inevitably toward justice, even if that justice arrives only as posthumous recognition of innocence, as scholarly documentation of judicial murder. The parking lot above the old execution ground hosts ordinary commerce now. Drivers unaware they rest above bones of women who died for knowledge, for truth, for the crime of inconvenient competence. But the ground remembers what pavement covers. The earth holds truths that concrete cannot suppress. Her story ends where it began, with a mother torn from children, with political necessity disguised as moral judgment, with truth silenced by steel. But it also continues through every generation that preserves her memory, every scholar who documents her innocence, every descendant who proves that life persists despite law's cruelest efforts. The jade hairpin will outlast the empire that orphaned its first owner. Memory will outlive the platform that tried to erase it. Truth will emerge from shadows where power sought to bury it. She died that morning in the execution ground. She lives forever in the reckoning that followed.